Joe Siano Real Estate with JK Realty here at JK Realty, and today is seminar day. We're doing our comprehensive real estate seminar. I have 6 industry-leading experts. I'm one of them. I have a mortgage, title, appraiser, lawyer, home inspector, realtor, all coming in to give some advice, updates. Looking forward to the day.
Okay.
Your spiel would be better than my spiel.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on a Saturday. It's a good Saturday to be here, though, because we're also going to be outside in this kind of weather. I'm Joseph Siano. I am proud owner and the main realtor here at JK Realty. Figure we try to do as much as we can for the community, bringing everybody in, trying to enlighten you as to what's going on, and we're trying to cover all aspects in this particular seminar. Here at JK Realty, we work with a lot of landlords, residential, commercial. We also do industrial work. So we really know a little bit of everything. I am not typically where this process starts, though. Whether you're buying or selling, the first thing you got to talk to when you're buying something is a mortgage representative. Even when you're selling something, where are you going to go? Who's there? Come on in. Come on in. Oh, it's done. Okay, good.
Our home inspector.
So typically what'll happen is you talk to the mortgage guy, even if you're selling, because where are you going to go once you sell? You get a bridge loan, which hopefully he touches on that too. It's easier for you not to have a contingency on a house when you're selling a house. Contingency, somebody's going to look at another house because what if you don't find one? I am going to start off with Peter Best from Movement Mortgage. His name really says it all. He's the best in the business. I'm working with him for a few years now. He's really here with us all the time. Basically, he works for JK Realty, but we can't legally say that. So Peter Best, come on up.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Absolutely, thank you.
Before I get started, I'd like to just kind of introduce Don Good. He's a home inspector. Maybe I don't know if you want to sit, Don. And
Sure.
wait till your spot on the.
Sit right here.
Yeah, there you go. Up, down,
Stand anywhere you want.
So like Joe said, I'm with the mortgage guy. I'm with Movement Mortgage. I'm a loan officer. My name is Peter Best. I think a lot of you know me. I put a kind of a list of topics with the kind of inside something that looks like this. But I don't think I'm going to be able to cover very much of it. But I wanted to kind of for all of you to sort of have various items in there as reference documents or resources to maybe review, as you have more time. But some of the items I wanted to cover today were the mortgage process real briefly, which is in this red booklet that everybody has. And then if we have time, kind of some of the do's and don'ts on credit and stuff like that. A little touch on rates. A little touch on what drives rates these days. And then various kind of subsets of rent versus purchase. I've got a flyer in there about that. A little touch on first-time home buyers. Buying down the rate. I don't know if any of you have ever heard that expression. Using points to buy down rates, and kind of give a quick little explanation of that. A little bit of a contrast and compare between a conventional mortgage and an FHA mortgage. A little bit of a touch on ARMs, what are they, an adjustable rate mortgage. And then, probably going to run out of time way before this, but there's a flyer in here about investment properties, there's a flyer in here about renovations. In fact, when Don Good talks, he's our home inspector representative, he's also a HUD consultant and an expert on renovations and very involved in renovation projects. Refis and cash outs will be another topic. And then, like Joe mentioned, kind of a bridge loan concept for folks that might have a home and they want to buy a new home. How do you make that happen? We have 2 beautiful programs at Movement. One, where a person that has an existing home, they can utilize up to 70% of the equity in that home to put towards the down payment on the new home. It's like kind of we take over the home for a short period of time and prepare it for sale, and sort of it takes that liability, that debt obligation off of your debt to income calculation, and enables you to make the purchase, and then that home gets sold and everybody gets made whole. And then we have a variation on that, which is really cool too, where in effect, that same program can turn your offer into a cash offer. Because there's a lot of competition out there these days with, regular buyers, like, the average person, and then guys coming in and paying cash, investors and stuff like that. So we have the ability to turn you, just a regular buyer, into a cash buyer, and so then you can suddenly be competitive in a situation like that if it calls for it. So then, let's see real quickly, maybe I can hit some of the high spots on the mortgage process. If you go to the third page, you get to items 2 and 3, and they're kind of what Joe was talking about. That's the loan officer gathering documents from you as prospective buyers in order to work on a mortgage pre-approval for you. And typically in a situation like that, we need, pay stubs, latest 4 pay stubs, 2 months worth of bank statements, W-2s, the latest 2 years of W-2s if you're a W-2 employee. Sometimes we have small business people that are applying for loans.
Sorry, Joey.
And there, in those cases, we need personal tax returns, business tax returns, K-1s, which show profit on the businesses, and we try to put all that together. Did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, hey, Jack.
Hey,
Come on in.
how are you?
Good.
A little late.
Look, please have a seat.
How's everybody?
So that is a key element to the process. Joe will have somebody contact him, or Trina, or another realtor in the office. And one of the first things that they want to do is to find out what that person's price range is. So then they call Peter Best, and then we kind of work through those numbers based on the documents that I just mentioned. You figure out what your affordability range is, and then get a pre-approval set up for you with a pre-approval letter, and then hand it back to Joe, and then he starts to look for the right property for you. I wanted to do just a little quick commercial about Movement Mortgage itself, rather than necessarily Peter Best in the mortgage process. But I work for Movement Mortgage, which is the #6 lender in the country. The company was started in 2007, right before the financial crisis. They had like 4 people and 2 offices. And they held on by their fingernails through the 2008 financial crisis and have grown steadily from there. It's pretty amazing. We have now 5,000 employees. We have over 1,500 loan officers all around the country. And it's run by this brilliant guy, enthusiastic, energetic guy named Casey Crawford, who's a former Super Bowl champion with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so he brings that kind of winning attitude and that enthusiasm to Movement Mortgage, and everybody feels it. He also is, he's a person of faith. So when you go to Movement's headquarters, like you do, like I did about a year and a half ago, for kind of onboarding, as you go around the building, you might see a sign here that might say something like, everything we are comes from God, things like that. So I'm not here to be a preacher or anything, but much like the guys that wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, they said things like, everything we are comes from God. We're empowered by a creator. So I think if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me and Movement. One of the things that caused Casey to do is he set up a whole thing called the Movement Foundation. So through the Movement Foundation, since like 2013 or something, $360 million worth of Movement profit has been put towards charitable causes, like charter schools. He has an objective to have 100 charter schools in 10 years in all 50 states. So some of that money goes there. Other parts of that money goes to build churches and water purification plants in Central America and in Africa. So that money is the profit that Movement has. It doesn't affect a person's rate or the type of mortgage they get or anything like that. It's just when the bottom line is calculated, then Casey and the company decide that they want to maybe take some of that profit and put it to charitable causes. And I think that sort of spirit permeates the whole organization, which is kind of unique. It kind of makes us, I think, different from probably all other mortgage companies. So one of the flyers that's in here relates to charter schools, so I put that in there so you know. This other flyer kind of talks about the Movement Mortgage's mission, and it again relates to those things that I mentioned. This next page, mine, I kind of started to run out of ink, but this shows where Movement went from 4 employees and 2 offices to the 5,000 employees and 554 locations. This says number 8 retail lender, but I think this is old dated. We're now at number 6 retail lender. And there are a couple of interesting things statistically here. 6 times in the Inc. 5,000, 75% of our loans are processed within 7 days. So we have our underwriters, our loan processors, they have an objective to get an underwriter approval within 6 hours, process the loan in a week, and then take a day for closing. Now, when you factor in they have to do home inspection, you have to do the appraisal, you know, those kinds of things kind of elongate that process. But if all of the documents are available and they're in place and submitted, and the borrower is really on it, you know, really on it, and organized, and, you know, pushing everything through, then we can achieve, you know, those kinds of goals. And the other one is we have a statistic that we're 24 to 25% faster on average with that whole process than anybody else in the country. Our people, our loan processors, our underwriters, they have objectives that relate to these kinds of statistics, and they're held accountable to it. So they're pushing to try to get things through, which then works to everybody's benefit, the realtors, the buyers, the sellers. So I wanted to make mention of that. There's another flyer in here called Preparing for Your Home Loan, and it's got some do's and don'ts, which I'd like to point out. If you're working on thinking about buying a home, or you're in the middle of the loan process, don't get any new credit cards. You know, some of these are obvious, but you'll be amazed. I'm sure Carol can attest to this. You'll be amazed at what things people will do in the middle of the loan process. All of a sudden they buy a new car, or these things just happen. So it's important to stress, don't open up any new credit. Keep all existing credit cards going. Pay them down, don't close them. Don't close them completely, but pay them down so that you reduce the amount of debt you're carrying as a buyer. Keep what's owed relative to what you could take out of that credit card to at least 50% or less, and actually the optimum is about 25%. So if you have a $4,000 limit on a credit card, keep your balance to $1,000 is like the optimum for this sort of thing. Don't max out or overcharge using credit cards. That kind of makes sense. From an employment standpoint, don't change jobs, because that affects, I know James has had some situations like that. From a underwriting standpoint, processing a loan standpoint, evaluating risk, steady employment, steady residency, those things are important. Don't consolidate. This seems counterintuitive, but don't consolidate all debt into 2 credit cards. If you have 5, don't just move them into 2. Better to keep all 5, just reduce the balances on each one. Do pay off any collections that exist in the last year. Older than that, don't necessarily do that. Talk to me first, because it might be that if it's an older collection account, further older than a year, maybe we get it paid off at closing, so it doesn't adversely affect. Any judgments we have to have documented, we have to have paperwork, stay current on everything that you have now. Don't make any changes in the non-financial statements.
Yeah, we have a couple there, yeah. Yeah, we got 2 chairs open for you guys. I planned it accordingly, don't worry.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you want to sit together?
Yes, thank you.
And we're just going over some mortgage stuff with Mr. Best here.
Yeah, I'm gonna get close to the end, so you can I'm not taking all the time today.
Just gonna,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Peter.
No, no problem.
Is this
Hi,
right?
folks, what are your names?
Townsend,
Townsend.
last name.
Darryl Mr. and Ms. Townsend, okay. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm talking about this little, you both have a packet that kind of has the red, I've got it on top. So I'm kind of working through the different resources in there. And maybe when we're done, I can kind of, if you guys could stay a little later, I can kind of work back through and cover what you missed.
Okay, thank you.
This next flyer, just again, it's kind of some of the same stuff I already talked about, but it has to do with credit and how the credit score is calculated. It's actually called a FICO score, is what we look at in mortgages. And it shows you what FICO scores, how they're evaluated in terms of low risk, high risk, moderate risk. And it's kind of some other stuff like I mentioned in that previous kind of little soliloquy there. The next item looks like this. It's rent versus purchase. I don't know if everybody's got this. Yes, Drea's on the ball. Thank you, Drea.
Wait, take the clip off. It's for me, no.
Right here.
So I've got two flyers in there that talk about when you're paying rent, what happens over time. It's like at different amounts of monthly rent. So for example, I have a $3,000 a month rental. Over a 5-year period of time, you will have paid out $180,000. I guess it's not rocket science that I think about, figure these things out, but it's kind of important to say it, that, that's, the flyer right after it is kind of a similar flyer, it's a black background. It actually extrapolates that all the way out over a 30-year period of time. So over 30 years, you're spending over $1 million, and you're paying the landlord's mortgage, not your own, and you're not building up your own equity if you're renting. The other things, back to the one right before it, when you have a property that you're paying a mortgage on, you get to deduct the mortgage interest and the taxes that you're paying off your income tax. So that has value as well. And then another way to compare it is even renting a home or renting a property, you have to put a month and a half security deposit, pay the first month in advance, pay a 1 month broker fee. So let's use that $3,000 base again. That's $4,500, $7,500, $10,500 just to get into an apartment. And there are some price points and down payment amounts where that could be a down payment on a house. Like let's just say it's hard to find a $300,000 house right now. But let's just say for sake of discussion, a $300,000 house, 3.5% down would be $10,500. Right, $3,500 for $100,000, $10,500. So you guys get the idea. I have a sheet that looks like this in there. I thought you folks might. There, Drea's got it right there. It's kind of it's like a column of interest rates. And I brought this to sort of. This is like a snapshot of a pricing engine that like I have or other loan officers have. And so the first column shows interest rates. And then the third column shows the monthly principal and interest payment. And then the fourth column gets into points. So let's start where you see the little star on the bottom left. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
So this is based on like a $300,000 loan, just to make the math easy. So where the star is, always in the pricing engine, that'll be the par rate. That's for that borrower, that buyer, that's the interest rate that, corresponds with their situation. So this is like kind of a theoretical example. So generally, at the par rate, there are 0 points. That's a 0 point spot. Now, first of all, what's a point? a point is 1%. So if you have a $300,000 loan, 1 point is 1% of 1,000 is, of 100,000 would be $1,000. So for each $1,000, it'd be, you know, so $3,000 would be 1% of $300,000. So that would be 1 point. And then points are broken up into fractions of points. And historically, they were eighths. You know, just like the stock market used to be eighths. Everything was an eighth. I'll bet it, you know, 7 1/8 or 16 3/8 or whatever. So, but then they've taken it on these and broken it into a decimal. So if we start where the 7.5 interest rate is, and you come across to the points, it's minus, and you go up one, it's just up an eighth. A lot of times this will just say 0 here. So then, what I do when I work with a borrower is I'm transparent with this. I explain this, and I tell them exactly what I'm doing, what I'm looking at. I'll even look at a borrower with my laptop with this right on the screen. But I try to walk through it.
So when you're buying something, getting a mortgage, do you always have to pay points?
No. The purpose of paying points is to lower your interest rate.
Oh, okay.
In fact, when you see national average rates, like let's say a few days ago, maybe the national average rate was 6.9 or 6.95 or something. That doesn't tell us how many people paid points to get their interest rate. So it's an average of people, some paid points, some didn't pay points. So the interest rates ticked up a little bit. They were kind of in the high 6s, let's say to low 7s. Now they're more like just in the last week or so, low 7s to mid 7s. And I'll talk about interest rates just in a second, but I wanted to just give you this example. If you come up this column, let's come up to 0.5. So that's a half a point. So that translates to $1,500 to buy that interest rate down to 7.3. And then if you come up a little bit more, you see a 1. So for 1 point, you could buy that interest rate down to 7.125.
So it's
But you'd have to pay the $3,000.
$3,000.
Put some parentheses.
Except,
Well, that's the price next to it.
yeah, it actually does the calculation.
Okay,
It's a one-time fee, but it reduces your overall,
right.
So
overall
it's-
mortgage.
It's more beneficial to pay some points.
Yes, yeah, because you're gonna save tens of thousands.
It's an incentive over
Over
the
the
year of
life
the life
of
of the loan.
And Jack has done this many times, I'm sure, with different rental properties that he owns. So I think I've spent enough time on that. Hopefully that gives a little bit of insight into points, because before I got into mortgages, it was sure a mystery to me.
What's the max of points someone can buy?
You kind of just, you go right up, this pricing engine would just keep
If
going.
someone wanted to be silly, can they really reduce their points down to
0, 1 or something. I don't know. I've never really gone up to see how far the pricing engine goes, because it does get kind of crazy. You know, 10 points, 12 points, 15 points,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, just
but you can do it,
If you have the money.
yeah. Yeah, it makes sense.
It's
You
a
can.
really good investment in the
Yeah.
beginning over a 25 or 30-year loan to do that, because you're gonna really reduce your mortgage
Yeah.
over, if you're gonna do a 30-year fixed, that's gonna save you a lot of money.
Now we're into hundreds of thousands.
Right, over 30 years, it's gonna save you a lot of money by putting that money up front. Even if you took out a loan just for those points,
To do
or
that.
borrow that money just for those points in advance from somebody to really reduce your points, because that's gonna save you so much money. And then also with mortgages, am I right? With mortgages, you can do interest-only payments,
True.
right, which would reduce your mortgage by usually 8 to 10 years over the course, which would really reduce your amount, which is really great. Can save you over your loan, can save you close to $30,000 on the average on, say, a $300,000 loan.
Excellent
Am I
point.
right?
Have you done that, Jack? Wow.
So now what does that mean? So you're paying the interest?
Interest
you're paying
only.
Interest only and.
Right,
then-
you could do interest-only payment,
Alright.
interest-only payments. So you're paying your mortgage,
You're paying your
right?
principal.
Paying your mortgage, you're paying it normal, but then what you do is you say, okay, I'm gonna apply interest-only payments.
Right,
Right, right,
and
and you do
that
that.
decreases your interest over
You'll be
30.
decreasing your principal.
Right, and decreases.
That's only towards your principals, not towards your mortgage. It's only
Right,
towards
yeah,
your
it's the
principal,
principal.
paying on your principal.
Excellent point. And when you do that, like let's say you do that twice a year, 3 times a year. Or some people you can even turn a 30-year mortgage into like a 15-year
Right.
mortgage. You do it every 2
It's
weeks.
amazing how much you can save.
It's huge, it's huge. Yep. Excellent points, Jack. Thank you.
That's because he's done it.
I know.
Because I listened and I took advantage of it.
Right, right.
Now, the next.
It's exciting, but it is exciting to take your 30-year, and if you can, reduce it to 15 years.
Yeah.
Just by doing that, smart play. Yeah, it costs you, but yes, it's a smart play, because you're reducing your 30 years to 15.
And you can do that, so sometimes you can add that option at the beginning. You can say, I want to have a 15-year mortgage. But on the other hand, maybe you don't want to be totally locked in on that.
Right.
You know, so you can do it the way Jack's saying, and still have the flexibility. Let's say you want to do it, but then all of a sudden in August, you say, well, I don't really, I'm a little light for a couple of months.
Yeah.
So then you just go back to the regular monthly payment.
Right.
Right,
Oh, they give
You're
you that
not
option
committed
then?
to it.
You
Yeah.
have that
You can
option
start
as
like
well,
that.
it's not that you're.
Correct.
concrete in it.
You wouldn't have that flexibility if you initially set it up as a 15-year mortgage. But you have that flexibility if you set it up as a 30-year and then do the Jack suggestion,
Yeah.
which is the way to go.
I believe you're obligated to your mortgage payment, but if you set up the option to have your interest payments, the way you set it up with your accountant and your bank, or whoever your financial people are, that option is, you can turn it on and turn it off as you see, which is very good.
Beautiful.
Well, my understanding.
No, that's exactly right. The next page, I just touch on real briefly, I think I'm out of time, and I don't want to get Joe behind on the schedule and go on everybody. But I touched on an ARM, the adjustable rate mortgage, just briefly, so you know it's there in case it is of interest. We offer a 5/6 ARM, a 7/6 ARM, a 10/6 ARM. What is that? Well, the 5 and the 7 and the 10 indicate how many years it's a fixed rate. Whatever the initial rate is, it stays in place for that period of time. And then the 6 means that once you get to the end of the 5 or the 7 or the 10, then the rate can change every 6 months. It used to change once a year, but then the industry switched to like a different kind of base index to compare it to. Then below, the caps. So you'll have a 5/6 ARM, and then you might also have caps of 2, 1, 5. So these just represent. I won't go into maybe all the detail. Maybe you can have it because I already feel like I'm getting this behind. But what it does is it kind of has controls, so you can sort of see, okay, what's the maximum this could be. The other thing to think about on an ARM is ARMs don't necessarily just go up; they can go down. So in the market we're in now, where everybody keeps projecting that interest rates are gonna be in a decline at some point, you could have an ARM and then expect the interest rate to go down. So then you kind of can save on the idea. Let's say you purchase, or you say if interest rates go down, I'll refi to get a lower rate. You could go this way. So then it'll automatically kind of be, in effect, sort of like refining for you. Right? It'll be adjusting, not really refi, it'll be adjusting downward as the interest rates come down. Now, who might do that? If you're only gonna be in the house for like 2, 3, 4, 5 years, then you don't have to deal with when it changes from a fixed rate to an adjustable, right? So that might make sense for some people. And some other reasons, but usually people, you stick with fixed rate loan, but I just wanted to make you aware, just so you have it in your toolbox. Were you done?
How about someone looking to just do flipping a house? Is that a good suggestion, or what is the suggestion for someone looking to buy and flip? What do you and Joey, or what do you guys think?
Have you done
Oh, yeah, plenty of flips, absolutely,
Okay, maybe,
absolutely.
maybe you could address this.
If you get the house for the right price, it's a good investment. That's going to need a lot of work, obviously, which you know. We've done, Jack and I have done quite a few flips together. I manage a few of his properties for him, and he's always wanting to learn a little more. But is there a certain amount of time if you buy a house with a mortgage that you have to wait until you sell it?
6 months at least.
6 months, which is going to take you that long to flip it anyway.
Always.
Right,
Well-
or more, because construction takes forever. That's the funniest thing is somebody's like, I'm doing a construction project, I'm moving out of my house. If I have a tenant, I'll be out when the construction project's done. All right, great, you might be out in 2 years. I don't know how long construction takes. But whenever you're flipping, a lot of the investors that I work with, we look at old listings with a lot of work that needs to be done, where people are looking to waive home inspections. If you're an experienced flipper or you have contractors that you work with directly, that's a great opportunity for you because you have those contacts. If you don't have those contacts, we actually have quite a few contractors that we give a lot of work to that really take care of our clients also just because of the amount of work that we give them. It's always a good idea to flip a house and make some money if the price is right. I'll do the comps. I will look into what it's going for now and what I think you'll be able to get to it in a certain timeline. If you go over the timeline, we have to adjust the comps, obviously. Every market is different. But, to me, always a good idea to either flip or get yourself an investment with some tenants in there.
So, with the short term, say you wanna flip with an arm, if you're, 6 months is really good, because normally it could take 5 or 6 months to take a house, rehab it, get it ready on the market and try to sell it, okay? I know pricing sometimes goes up and down. The height of the market was super good, what, a year and a half ago, super good. Right now it's good, you know, but with the arm, right, because with the adjustable rate, so you hit that six month period, you're not penalized if you get out of the arm after 6 months.
No. And
there's no pre-payment or
would have to read the fine print first, just to make sure there aren't any things like that in there. You have to read the exact guideline.
you buy it and sell it and pay back the arm within, say, 8 months. You don't wanna be penalized.
Right.
That's something you should really think about.
Yeah.
So if you're going to flip a house, you really need a lot of cash in order to renovate it, right? So you need money to get the mortgage, then you need your money to renovate it.
I also believe there's something called a 203K loan, which will put the cost into the construction into the price. So you're buying the house for $400,000, but you're not buying the house for $400,000. They're giving you $400,000 in order to buy the house and to flip it.
Oh, so that's good.
It may not cover all of it, so you should always have some cash reserve, which is another reason if you're flipping a house, don't use all your cash on it. Don't put a big down payment on it, because you don't know what's gonna have to be changed until we do the home inspection. A lot of people are waiving home inspections right now, but you still do the home inspection. That's for your informational purposes, especially on a flip. And then the fine print could always say if there's an issue bigger than I want to take care of, I'm able to back out of the sale. A lot of asbestos, mold, remediation, an oil tank is something you really have to look for, because that should always come down to the seller. Because if that oil tank leaked, that could be thousands of dollars. You'll hear people throw out $15,000. I've never seen $15,000 worth of leaked oil. Never. $2,000, $3,000? I've seen it. I'm not gonna say it doesn't happen if somebody didn't overfill and just left the thing going and then the whole ground is saturated, but in residences, it's rare to go over, let's say, 5,000 is the, I haven't even seen that much yet on leakage.
You know, once we get Dawn talking about home inspections and stuff, Dawn, maybe you could kind of swerve over into renovations a little bit too.
Right, well, I'm not gonna really talk a lot about home inspections, because if our audience are mostly realtors, they're already pretty familiar with the home inspection process. I am a licensed home inspector. We're gonna talk more about the renovation
Okay.
loans, because as far as investing, you know, you have the Fannie Mae home style. You can use that as a flipper, as opposed to the 203K, and you can shed light, you know.
And don't worry about that, there's not too many realtors here. Actually, we have a couple people here that are here specifically for the home inspection, know what to expect. Yeah, so yeah, definitely go through what you do on the home inspection. Any other questions for my buddy, Mr. Best?
I do have a question, because a lot of us are flipping, like
Mhm.
we're interested in flipping.
Absolutely.
So it's like, is movement mortgage, are you okay with those types of loans? Because it's not like long-term loans, these
Well-
are just temporary loans.
Like Don was saying, you know, what is the time frame on like?
On a 203K, 6 months,
Okay.
depending on the size of the project. I mean, obviously, if you got like like I've seen home styles as high as 1 million, you're not gonna do a $1 million renovation in 6 months.
Absolutely not.
It's probably gonna take you about a year.
Yep.
A year and a half. Yeah, 6 months is the standard timeline. And, you know, but if you're doing kitchens and bathrooms, that type of renovation, you probably could do between 2 to 4 months maybe. But if you're buying a house that's in severe distress, maybe that we need a sewer line or a new gas line pulled, those may take longer because they're permitting that we have to go through. And the permitting requirements and costs are higher on those type of repairs.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna
Especially from the street.
leave the stage. and-
Yeah, you step aside if people have questions or I need you, you're here.
From the
Okay.
public to
Here,
the
here.
private.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Mr. Best, thank you very much. Okay, so you met with the mortgage guy. Now it's our turn, we have some fun. No matter what you're looking to do, buy, sell, or invest, I'm with you every step of the way here, as any realtor should be. Right now with the market the way it is, a lot of people are trying to be the most competitive offer in buying a house or an investment property. So they're spending good money, more money than maybe they should be. They're waiving home inspections, but they're doing the home inspections, but they're not asking for anything. A lot of people are also waiving appraisals. Problem is, if the house is listed at $499 and you're offering $625, is the house going to appraise for $625 if the asking price is $499? Now, when I list a property, I underlist it just to get a lot of people into it, a lot of people interested. I want all the loans, I want all the offers I can in that property. But if I get that $100,000 over, $125,000, which I'm seeing, and you're bringing me that offer and not doing anything for the appraisal or waiving the appraisal, to me it's not an offer. You're just throwing a big number out there, hoping it under appraises, and then we have to meet you at that appraisal. Once the buying process starts, the first thing we do is we get you on a list, and now you're looking at properties. You're getting an email every day with new properties in your area with your specifications that you're looking to do. This many bedrooms, this many bathrooms, I need this much square footage, I need a basement. You're getting that every day. And then you're seeing something you like. Realistically, if there's an open house, I say go to the open house, let me know if you like it. Chances are, you're not gonna like the first couple houses you see, or you're gonna see 300 people online, and you say, I don't wanna compete with this. A lot of times I recommend we go separately. Let's not go to the open house. If they're doing showings the next day, the day after, let's just go privately, let's tour the house. Because even if you go to the open house, and I'm there, I'm not able to see everything with all these people that I wanna see. I have a background in home improvement project management, so when you and I walk through a house, I'm pointing out all the flaws to you. You're seeing all the benefits, I'm telling you what you're going to need to spend money on. Cracks in foundation, this is mold, this is asbestos tile, you're gonna have to do something, this roof is leaking, look at the watermarks, look at the peeling paint, look at the bubbling paint. These are all red flags that I'm gonna point out to you. I smell mold in the basement. That's me doing my job for you, because I don't want you spending unnecessary money, and I'm not a realtor that's gonna let you put in $100,000 over asking. Speaking of investments, one of the investors I work with bought an amazing property on Valley Road in Montclair. Amazing property, $375. The lot was 60 by 150 with a house on it. $375 we got it for because it needs to be. It was listed as gut or demo. We went for the permits. We did everything. The town says, you can't demo this house. It's a historical house. It wasn't disclosed. The agent didn't disclose it. First thing I do is I call the lawyer. What do we do about this not being disclosed? Nowhere in the town did this say, this is a historical house. No matter what you looked into, wasn't listed as that, but the town said, nope, this is what it is, you can't do anything. So, after back and forth with, helping the whole way, I was there, we were able to rip off the back of the house and add on to it, but the front of it has to stay exactly as it is. Now this house needed sewer lines. Another thing I do is, Joe, I want this house, I'm gonna waive the inspection. Great, but we're not gonna waive it for structural, environmental, or sewer. A lot of people don't consider sewers now. Most of the sewers that were built are over 100 years old now. Roots are growing into the sewer. So we bring somebody in to do a sewer scope. And they're telling us, number one, they've been throwing grease in this sewer for 50 years. It's all here. Very common. I hope people aren't still doing it, but people that used to do it, the damage is done. Or roots are growing into the pipes, and that's a very big excavation. That's a big cost. So we'll get a price. This particular property got a price of $120,000 to replace the sewer. We immediately got another estimate because, hey, you don't want the job. That's more money I've ever seen for a replacement of a sewer. And we got somebody that was a fraction of the price once we negotiated and closed. Because even when we brought the bid in, they were, you must be joking, $120,000. It was a lot of footage, there was a lot of trees that had to be removed, but it was still a ridiculous amount of money. If you're selling your home, in order to buy a home, the first thing we do is we start looking at, hey, this is what we have to do to buy something before you even put your house on the market. I want to know what we're looking for. I want a condo. Most people selling their houses now are moving into condos. Condos at that $300,000 mark is basically all you could get right now, and it's going to be a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. That's what they're going for, $275, $260, $325. I'm working with someone currently, sold their house, 4-bedroom, didn't need it, looking for a 2-bedroom condo, and we're getting outbid and we're putting in cash offers. So it's not the easiest market to be in right now. And we're doing everything, but in a condo, there is no structural or environmental inspection. That's on them. You're mechanical. You want to go in for, this is what's happening, we need a mechanical inspection, make sure everything inside the condo is working properly, no wiring issues. We market the property if you're going to sell your property. I do nothing but advertise it for 10 days, and then I do one showing. And then at this time, I'm calling for highest and best 3 days later. And it's working because people see 300 people at the house trying to get into the house, signing in with their realtors by themselves. It's a hard market right now for buyers, amazing market right now for sellers. Which is why, if you see a house you like, my recommendation is always, let's go by ourselves. Let's not deal with the crowd. Let's take the time, and then I could run the comps. You're gonna have to spend over asking. But it's not gonna be anything that I would never suggest that you're not gonna recoup your money on. Investment properties, it's the same thing. I'm big with investors, but my investors are very fortunate, or I should knock on wood, I'm very fortunate that nothing's backfired. Anybody that has bought an investment property from me has made money off that property or are currently renting the property out and getting income from it. The only thing they're not making any more of is dirt. That's it. Buy land because it's running out. That's it. Obviously now you see a lot of towns overbuilding because people need to move in. People need to move in. There's not enough inventory. Overbuilding is increasing everybody's taxes, increasing traffic, getting people in that town upset. Now people in that town are leaving to go to another town that's less, but they're going to start building too. This is just happening everywhere right now. So, once we put in the offer, what's going to happen is you're going to get accepted or denied. Denied, we keep looking. Accepted is great. Let's move on from here. We're going to schedule the home inspection. We're going to talk to the lawyer. The first thing that's going to happen is the attorney is going to come in and they're going to cancel the contract immediately. That contract is canceled. We're rewriting it. It's the attorney review period. New Jersey is one of the only states that still has an attorney review period. Most contracts are done realtor to realtor. The contract has all the writing in it, but the attorneys in New Jersey a while ago, nobody now, not bad-mouthing any attorney, said, we're not making any money and this is a legal contract, we need to be involved in it. So, the Association of Realtors said, okay, we're putting in the attorney review period. 3 days, which is usually a little less or a little more, they cancel it, now they're going back and forth rewriting the terms of the contract. Big thing that you have to do, as a realtor, I read the attorney review period. A lot of realtors let the lawyers handle it, but I get it. I'm always CC'd on the email, and I am knowing that, hey, they said they were waiving the home inspection, but guess what? We're doing it. They said they were waiving the appraisal, but guess what? We're only covering $5,000 of it. Guess what? If we find any mold whatsoever, we could cancel. Okay, that's my red flag to call them and say they're changing the terms. I call the realtor. I let him know that we do have backup offers. I'm not going to waste your time with a $500,000 offer that's going to turn into a $450,000 offer because of everything they're asking from us. It's a very common thing, unfortunately. Very important to read every word back and forth. A lot of people leave it to the lawyers. I don't think that's us doing our job properly. We're in it for the whole thing. Home inspection, I'm there the whole time. I'm there at the home inspection. I'm not bothering the home inspector. I'm letting them do their job. But I need to know what they're finding because they're very vocal at the home inspection. A lot of home inspectors are going to tell you what they see, whether you should ask for it, whether you shouldn't. Big deal, little deal. Appraisal. Appraisal's a big one because now I have to go to the appraisal with a bracket, as we call it. Here's some properties that are a little lower. Here's some properties that are a little higher. Here's some properties that are right on point. This is selling for the right price. Because if it doesn't appraise and they didn't waive the appraisal, guess what? We're not closing at that price unless the people have an extra $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in the bank to close with. It's always going to depend on what you're looking for. A lot of people are going to make you look into areas you don't want to look into. They're going to have you, hey, you don't need this, you don't need this, this is a luxury. If you're buying a house or an investment property, you know what you're looking for. Stand by that. You'll find it. Might take a little time. Like if you say, Joe, I just want Clifton, that's hard. Clifton's just hard because you're giving me one town to work in. Bloomfield's very comparable. Nutley, Montclair. I don't want to be in Passaic. I don't want to be in Patterson. There's some really good sections of these towns too. So you should always look at the listings and then look at the map and say, you know what, this is worth it for me. I want to go ahead and I want to put some, money in. I absolutely love Hackensack. A lot of people don't like Hackensack. I love Hackensack. Hackensack, you can walk out your door, everything's there for you. As an investor for a rental property, that's where you want to be. You can walk to any bus stop, you can walk to any supermarket, restaurants, anything you need, laundromats, is within walking distance in Hackensack. They're building it up like the city. Questions about buying or selling? Renting, investing. Pete, what are the current mortgage rates?
So they ticked up a little bit in the last few days. So I don't know if you guys watch mortgage rates, but every time a new national business result comes out, or an inflation, consumer price index, or producer price index, or the Fed watches that, the stock market reacts, and the stock market thinks, oh boy, that's going to cause interest rates to go up, or that's going to cause interest rates to go down. So the last few days, they kind of jumped, like from, let's say, maybe 6.9 something average to now like maybe low 7s to mid 7s. Now they may come back down. They will eventually, but it looks like all the prognosticators were saying they're going to have like 6 rate decreases in 2024. Starting in April or something, and then they started changing that. Well, maybe they're going to start in June. Now it's sort of like, well, 6 rate decreases, I don't know, maybe a couple. So they keep
down to 1 now.
Down to 1. So, so I guess the result of that is it doesn't make sense to wait for interest rates to go down.
That's my favorite thing I have in my office.
Crystal ball.
It's my crystal ball. I've been trying to get this to work. This is right on my conference table. Joe, what's this house going to go for? What's the market going to do? What's going to happen? You know what? I've had so many people look at this, I can't figure it out. It's just not working at this time. Our crystal ball as mortgage people, as real estate people, doesn't work anymore.
No.
Oh, it turns on, it makes noises, it does all that good stuff, but it doesn't tell me the future, unfortunately. And we've bought quite a few. They don't work.
You're not a clairvoyant?
I try to be. I really do try to be, and it's not working at this time.
I like the color of your.
Everything is green here. I think you guys know that. So on this table, I also have stuff that I'm able to email to you if you are interested in this. This changes every season like the market does. This is things to consider when buying a home, Spring Edition 2024. 29 pages. That's why I typically email it. It's a lot of green ink because once again, this is something that we design and we put together to help you understand what's going on in spring, summer, fall, winter of that year. We also have the things to consider when selling your house. Obviously, the buy versus rent, I want to touch on real quick. A lot of people rent. A lot of people are against the buy versus rent thing because when you rent, I understand it, a lot of things aren't your problem. And you don't want the headache of fixing the furnace, dealing with the wiring, doing the landscaping. Another reason a condo is a good thing, but with a condo, the mechanical's all you. That's entirely up to you. Renting is not a bad thing. Now, we wrote an offer. We accepted an offer, and this guy's timing couldn't have been better. I was like, how do I keep talking? First off, remember guys, coffee, hot water, there's croissants, get up, there's soda, ice, enjoy. This is Matt Trella.
Good morning,
Matt Trella is a lawyer that we work with, and now we're going to talk about the attorney review period, Mr. Trella.
Yes,
Come on in.
come on in.
Take the floor.
I'll tell you, take the floor. Take it anywhere you want.
Please, please.
No, well, once we get involved, once the price is agreed to, we go into what they call the attorney review period, which is basically 3 days. But if you get lawyers that cooperate and know each other, we can extend that. And we look at the contract. Now, if you're a buyer, we make sure that there's nothing that's going to hurt you in there. We make sure that you have your inspections. We make sure you have your mortgage contingency. We make sure you have every clause that you could possibly need to protect you, and that the seller can't get out of the contract unless there's a justifiable reason. As far as that's the attorney review major reasons. You have to have everything. You have to have the inspections. Inspections, mortgage contingency. If you're buying something with tenants, you got to figure out what do you want to do with that tenant. What are they paying on rent? Are you happy with the tenant? Do you want to keep the tenant? Do you want to get rid of the tenant? The big thing now is oil tanks. If you're buying a house, if there's an oil tank on the property, I will not represent you as a buyer unless you agree that that oil tank's got to go, because there's too many issues with that. You have to get it out. There's companies. Your major referral on oil tanks?
It really depends on who. A lot of people have somebody, but typically as a real estate agent, lawyers, mortgage guys, inspectors is hard. Lawyers and mortgage guys is easier for me to recommend because I'm going to give you 2 or 3. Technically, legally, I'm not supposed to recommend anybody to you. So I leave it up to the people, but I do the research on the reviews of the company, and I talk to the people at the company to make sure you're making the best decision.
Yeah, I happen to be an old-fashioned practitioner. I came out of law school in 1970, before most of you people were born. My father was a lawyer. He was a lawyer from 1936 to 1995. I didn't want to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a sportscaster. But obviously that didn't work out. 53 years later, although I did write to Major League Baseball, and they answered me, and they said in 1968, we have not hired a male employee in 15 years. Because in those days there was no internet, there was no cable, and they had 5 guys that ran baseball and a whole bunch of lovely ladies with suits on and carbon paper typing away in the process. But it's our job to protect you. It's our job to make sure that we have a mortgage clause if you need a mortgage, who you're dealing with. And once you satisfy those things, once you're happy with the inspection, everything gets worked out on the inspection. If there's major problems, I could tell you, forget about it. Don't buy this house. There's too many issues, and most of those go with oil tanks. Then once you get past the inspection stage and you get a mortgage commitment, then you're in good shape. Then we just have to worry about timing, tenants, whether you want to keep the tenant, whether the people, when the people want to close, whether you have to sell something in order to buy something. It's my job to protect you. And then once we get past that aspect, we turn it over to the title company who does the title search. And somebody else will tell you about title searches. But that's just to make sure that there's nothing on title that could screw the thing up and hurt you as a buyer. If there's liens, we have to make sure they get paid off. If there's any judgments against the seller, we have to make sure they get paid off. If there's judgments against you, we have to figure out how we're going to handle those. Because a judgment against you, if you're taking a mortgage, will go behind that mortgage. That doesn't have much to do with you, but it would go behind a first mortgage. So you have the big things are the inspection, the mortgage, tenants if you have it, when they want to close, oil tanks.
I have a question about the oil tanks. What if the oil tank is operational? There's still a lot of
Oh.
houses that have an oil tank.
You got to get a test. You have to get the pressure
Get the
test.
Pressure test,
Perk test?
dirt test, or not?
It's a pressure, make sure there's no leakage out of the
Pressure
tank.
tanks, make sure it holds.
It holds,
pressure over
and it's working properly.
function of time.
And they check the soil around the area to make sure, if there's a leak, they check the soil. Then you got a problem. Then, you don't have a problem, the seller has a problem.
Many times there's tanks inside the basement that are, outside, exposed. Most of the time.
Those are easy.
Those are very simple.
Those are easy, because if it's leaking, all you gotta do is look on the floor.
Those are very good.
Yeah, the ones that are outside are.
In the ground, they're different.
And I will not represent you if you say, leave the tank in the ground. And basically, mortgage companies don't wanna do it either, because there's the possibility of chaos is immense. Yes, young lady?
I have a question. If you're a seller and you have tenants,
Mhm.
and the buyer wants the tenants out before you close,
Correct.
how,
60 days, you have to give them 60 days. Well, A, do they have a lease? If they
right,
have a lease, the lease covers. If they
Right.
don't have a lease, you have to give them 60 days written notice. And it has to be 60 days, if their rent is payable on, let's say, May 1st, you have to give them, a notice to get out on July 1st. You have to give them the 60 days if there's no lease. If the lease, then obviously that governs the performance.
right, that part I knew about the lease, but if it was like month to month,
If it's, you still gotta give them 60 days.
60 days notice to cease?
60 days notice to quit.
Notice to
Get
quit.
out, because you're gonna occupy the premises. Okay, now, there's two ways to look at that, and I'll get to you in 1 minute. If you're gonna buy it and you're gonna occupy the premises, you better well occupy those premises.
Right,
Otherwise, you're looking at a lawsuit.
Right.
And lawyers are just, pain in the fanny. They'll come after you for that. If you're not gonna occupy the premises, you occupy with a renter. But if you're doing it on the basis that it's gonna be occupied by the new owner, you better damn well make sure that you do occupy. And people say, well, how long do I have to live there? A year. You gotta stay there a year. After a year, you can say, well, I changed my mind. My sister-in-law lets me live with her, so forth and so on. But you gotta, and it's gotta be a written notice, and it's gotta be given to them. And if they are never home, refuse to take it, then you tack it to the door and you take a picture on your telephone.
So,
Phone.
question,
Yeah.
if there's a lease, a long-term lease, say they have a year left on their lease, and you wanna sell your house because there's a problem, say a family matter, you need to sell the house, you need to finance, what do you do in that case?
What do you do? If you can't talk to them nicely, I've had people buy them out. I've bought people out. I owned a condo right down here in the complex down the street. And it came a point where I didn't want to be a landlord anymore. And I went to the person and I said, listen, I'll give you X dollars. Get out in 3 months. They took the X dollars and they got out in 3 months, and then I was able to sell it. Unfortunately, I didn't know you then.
That's okay, and I know we have a question in back. I just want to reach out.
Yeah.
I just want to touch on this, just before you go into that. If I'm representing the seller, we are not putting in writing, we are putting in writing that the house will not be delivered vacant. I can't do it. You're not going to be able to get the people out in 60 days to close, and then it's going to hold up the closing. My recommendation is always, okay, we're going to ask them to vacate. Your lawyer is going to do it after the inspection, after the appraisal, after the certificate of occupancy. Because the last thing we need is them not letting us into the house for some reason. Legally, they have to within 24 hours. It's in the lease. Doesn't mean they're going to, doesn't mean they're going to make it easy. After everything's done, we'll give the notice. Here's your 60 days. Call me. I'll help you find something. But I, as a buyer, as agent, it's the same thing. We're going to give them notice after the inspections are done. We do not want anything holding up this process, and you're going to close with the tenants in place, because you can't ask the people to wait 90 days if the people need an extra 30 days.
Yeah. You also might have a situation where, depending on what the rates are, the rates now are silly, but they're stable. And if they are where they are, if they're moving like they were a couple of years ago, people wanted to close. I gotta close. I can't take an extension on my mortgage commitment. I have to close, because otherwise I'm gonna go from 3 to 5 or 6. So that becomes an issue. That becomes a real issue.
Mr. Patience,
Yes, sir.
I love it.
So So a few years back, there was a time lapse between the government where they can take some there was a situation where you can't take the tenants out for a while.
You mean with COVID?
Yeah.
Oh,
Is that over with?
That's over with now,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
The state, you know,
Now, fortunately, they were also doing the rent forgiveness,
Yeah.
which they didn't really look out for the landlords, they were looking out for the renters.
I mean, that's a situation in which, in my 53 years of doing this, that's the only time anything like that has ever occurred. Yes, young lady?
I have a question here. I've read it in the newspaper and on TV and so forth about these squatters.
Yeah, no.
Where
Question about squatters, I like it.
Well, there was a case in Beverly Hills or a high-class area in California. Then there was another one that was in New York, and apparently the way I interpreted it was that the squatters were there, the house was vacant, it was going through the process of selling. It was a high-end $4 million or whatever, and the neighbors are having problems. They have to hire security because these squatters feel that they're entitled to have parties. And when they have parties, it's not just from 10 o'clock to, let's say, 1 o'clock. It starts at 12 o'clock and ends at 9.
So what do you do?
What exactly? Are they stuck? They damage the place.
Mainly, most of the time, the police will not get involved because they tell you it's a civil issue.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have to retain the services of some company to get rid of them. I've never had that issue.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying, it's prevalent now. It's not that it's just one
Okay.
of these things.
Well,
Then I happen to read also that there's this one fella who actually, his mother had the problem. So what he does is he actually decided to hire himself. He goes in, and there's the lease, where's the lease? They came up with a phony lease or whatever the case may be. But he decides that he's gonna stay there and take part in the house as well. And more or less, the guy gets annoyed, and he decides to leave because, in other words, he was a thorn on his side, you know. But I'm just saying, what legalities? It's like, and then, you know, and not only that, now this other girl had bought it as an investment, but somehow during the interim, I don't know what happened, she was away, like I said, the squatters. This was happening in New York just recently, a couple of weeks ago. But the thing of it is, the judge or during this interim said, well, you have to just rent an apartment or go into a hotel. You can't be there.
Well, I can only answer, I can only answer New Jersey. I don't know anything about any.
Well, what about New Jersey?
New Jersey, you'd have to go to court, and you would have to get an order of ejectment. Then, with that order of ejectment, the sheriff's officers will go and remove the people. Yeah.
But then that's a process that takes.
It's a process.
Oh, absolutely.
It's gonna take a number of months, so in the meantime, you're stuck because you don't get the rental or whatever it is, plus the court fees, plus the other thing is too, with these squatters then, you're stuck with the legal fees, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everything, unfortunately, when you get into a situation like that, is not, as we used to say, hunky-dory. It's not, you gotta go to court, you gotta get an order removing them, and then you have to use a sheriff's officer.
Yeah.
You get a writ of execution, and then you get rid of execution, the sheriff's officer will go and remove them.
I mean, on that point, there's a house in Montclair that's selling for, I don't know, a couple $1 million. So one of my friends, she's hired and she goes there, stays overnight a couple nights, turns all the lights on to make it so that somebody's there. So that's her job. She has to go there. Yeah, I'm going to Montclair.
She's buying or selling?
No, so there's a seller.
Oh.
They're going through a divorce, and it's now a year, and they're afraid of someone coming in and squatting. So they pay her to go there, stay there during the week for a couple hours, just so they make it like someone's living there. There's a car in the driveway. Her husband picks her up, leaves the car there. It's like all just to protect Mrs. Montclair.
And so that, I'm just gonna jump
So I'm
in too.
saying, like, that's
When it
crazy.
comes down to the realtor,
He's like a nervous wreck.
that's part of our job. My job is to go to the house when it's vacant. I'm at the house every day if you have a vacant house to make sure the doors are locked, nobody's in, the lights are off, nobody's in the driveway. There's no entry points that people could get into. So if you have a vacant apartment, or a house I should say, I'm making sure the locks are working. I'm making sure that there's windows are locked and that people can't fit into these windows. And then I'm going every day. This is the part that the realtor comes in, and once again, there's a lot of people that don't do the 100%. I'm not bad-mouthing anybody. Everybody's busy. I get it. If you have a listing of a vacant house, your job is to keep that house protected and make sure that this doesn't happen. It happens in apartments. I have an apartment complex in Patterson that I help out on Market Street, 19 Market Street. It's in an industrial area. It's a good area, but unfortunately what's happening is people are getting into the apartment somehow. So now I go, every time I have a listing, I'm there every other day, making sure the door is locked, because somebody had a key, making sure nobody's in there. And if somebody's in there, within 24 hours, I'm putting in a new door, a new deadbolt, and a new doorknob. And then they're out.
I mean, those are unique situations. I'll have to admit, in thousands and thousands of closings I've done over the years, I've never had a squawk.
But you know what it is, I think
Luckily,
times are
yeah.
changing now,
Oh,
because
yeah.
like I said, 2-3 years ago, well, there's COVID or anything like that, you never heard of this. But apparently, it's now the in thing, I'm supposed, it's another new concept that's going to be developed. And if people can get away with it once, it starts a prerequisite, it's gonna continue and continue until finally there maybe will be a law that will state, But it's gonna be rampant, trust me.
Okay, I trust you. I trust you.
I won't be around to see it, thank God.
Me
but-
either.
But I'm telling you right now, the way things are going that I hear, the victim is now the criminal.
I don't doubt that
You know?
anything
Turn on the
can
radio,
happen.
all these things you hear, it's.
When I came out of school, if you talked about something, you would say, "Well, that can't happen.
Yeah,
There's no
exactly,
way."
exactly.
And now today, you look at it. Somebody walks into my
Exactly.
office, and they say yada yada yada, and I say, "Can't be." But it happened. But it happens. It happens.
So I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Go
I'm
right
going to
ahead.
interrupt for a second. We're in attorney review, because I'm trying to do this as the process. Now, we're still in attorney review. What do you order? As soon as attorney review is almost completed or completed.
What do I order?
Yes.
The inspection.
Title?
Well,
You're my new lawyer.
I don't
You're my new lawyer.
I don't
that's
order
right.
title. I don't
I was
order
gonna
title.
ask that, I was like, wait, hold on, I was gonna ask this, so this always made me crazy. You got a contract in, goes into attorney review, then it goes to a title search?
Sunflower,
Yeah,
Duran,
That's
everybody
crazy,
from Elite.
Because
Perfect
now,
timing.
all of a sudden, there's a whole bunch of mess on this title, and now I'm in contract.
Yeah, but if there's a mess on the title, that's what I was talking about before. If they're are you selling or buying?
Bye.
You're buying. If there's a problem with the title, that's the seller's problem.
Yes.
But it delays the process.
So
Sometimes.
title insurance is like the one insurance that protects you from past events, unlike other insurance that protects you for future events. Title protects you from past events. So a title search will let you know if you have any easements, which is like an example of an easement if somebody needs to pass through your driveway to go to their door. That's the example of an easement. Or encroachment, if somebody's fence is on your yard, a lien or a judgment, and the seller cannot pass the title without getting rid of those, the liens and the judgments. We are Elite Title Group. We're in Lyndhurst, New Jersey, and we have an office in Rivervale as well. We do title in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Florida, and we have a sister 1031 exchange company that can do 1031 exchanges in all 50 states. A 1031 exchange is when you have an investment property and you go to sell that property, you're gonna have to pay capital gains taxes up to like 34%. And if you do a 1031 exchange, you use a qualified intermediary like us, Elite 1031 exchange, and you get to defer those taxes. And that's how investors build their real estate portfolio. They keep deferring the taxes, and then they put it into a will, and you get to, evade the taxes, or
And they-
defer them.
And they die.
Then they die.
Then they don't worry about
Swap till you drop is the term. Yeah. So, any questions?
Yeah, my question is, you explain that, so let's say you have an investment property,
Mhm.
okay? And you sell it, and you get a profit, let's say, of 50,000, 100, whatever. Now, with the capital gains, do the federal government gives you like 2 years and you can reinvest it, or when you're talking about 30%, how does that go?
You have to pay the taxes on that. If you do
whether-
not
whether you-
reinvest
Oh, that's
the
what I'm
funds.
asking, so
Right,
if you
so-
reinvest it,
Yes.
then you don't have to pay the
But
taxes.
you cannot let that money hit your account, you have to reinvest you have to use a qualified intermediary and have them hold the money in escrow and then send it to
I
the
see.
replacement
So
property.
in other words, your title company would hold that at escrow?
Yes.
I see.
And then you get to defer the taxes.
I see. And what's the period of time that you're allowed to do that? Because I mean,
3
sometimes
months.
you sell a
So
property.
you have to do it within 180 days, and that deadline is really
really?
strict, yes,
Oh,
180
oh,
days.
oh.
Within
And
40,
that's federal?
yes. It's all 50 states,
Okay.
all 50 states, yeah, you can
buy.
you can sell in New Jersey and buy in Hawaii, doesn't matter.
Right.
And we're qualified to do the 1031 exchanges in all 50 states. So there's a 45-day identification period where you pick 3 properties and then you say, well, one of these 3 properties, but that's flexible, like that, they don't hold you to that, like you don't have to pick the properties you identified. It's just a language in the contract saying you may do a 1031 exchange that protects you, from paying those taxes.
So in other words, if you sell at a profit, it has to be that, let's say it's 50,000 capital gains. You have to get that 50,000 into the new property.
Escrow, yes. Yes, the whole amount.
The whole amount,
Yeah,
plus
plus-
the 50 that you gained. In other words, the original price plus the 50.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
You have to hold that in
Just
escrow.
wanna know that,
Any more questions?
I have, like, just say you have a shared driveway.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens on the title when you have that shared driveway?
Well, an easement passes with the property.
So it would be in there.
Yes, it will be in there.
But there's all kind of easements. You could have a Passaic Valley water easement, you could have a pipe going through your backyard, you could have many pieces of
High
property.
tension wiring.
I was just gonna say, PSE&G, you could have all kinds of things. As I said, the Water Commission, PSE&G, those are the 2 biggies around here.
And how long does a title search take?
3 to 5 days. Our company is really good. We've been in business for about 20 years and we have all the 4 major underwriters.
They're good. I've used them and
What's the cost these days?
of course, it's based on price.
Yeah, it's, so the title insurance, usually the premium is about 1% of the sale price.
So if you buy a $500,000 house,
About $5,000.
about $5,000
Title search.
for the title search and the insurance policy.
And then what do you mean by premium?
The premium is based on insurance policy.
And you hold on to that, just in case. So when you go to sell it, if somebody says, well, you bought it from Joe Blow, and I see something against Joe Blow, that title insurance policy will eliminate that risk.
Right.
Yes.
Even like, say you sell the house 30 years from now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good forever, good as
Like I
long as you
said.
own the home.
It protects you, and the searches go back about 30 years, right?
50 years.
Sometimes on the judgment search, on the Charlie Jones judgment search, they will search the prior owners of the person that you're buying it from, right? Like,
Yes,
that
it goes back, like you said, 50 years. Okay.
That's a good, somebody searches back to prior owners, that's a good title searcher. Most of them don't. Most of them ask do you have a policy? And the searches will go from there up, not back.
From the-
Can that be requested by the buyer?
Sure.
And that's not additional cost?
No.
And what are some of the fees, like, attorney fees that these days people are expected to see for closing?
Normal closing fees on a buyer, about $1,500. Then you have the recording fee, normally with the deed and the mortgage, maybe $250, depending on how many pages the mortgage has. Some banks have a 4-page mortgage, some banks have a 22-page mortgage, and the register in Passaic County, or in any county, charges per page. So you got, let's say, $250 recording. You got the survey, which generally costs about maybe $900. Title insurance, depending on price. Home inspection, ballpark $750.
Sounds like the title inspection is the most expensive in the closing.
It is, well.
I always thought it was the lawyer.
No, the lawyer is actually pretty reasonable.
Lawyer's
The fees are like $1,500 to
$1,500,
$2,500.
depending on, if you're buying a $3 million house, you're gonna pay me more than $1,500.
Exactly.
The risk on my part
Right.
is,
Right.
is, you know, more. But normally it's $1,500 to buy a house.
And surveys sometimes are difficult to get the old surveys. Most towns are not keeping surveys. Years ago, even
Towns don't keep surveys.
at one point, Clifton, I think during the sixties, used to keep the survey. There's I have surveys that are in the system, in Clifton. I have seen mine from years ago.
In Clifton?
Well,
That's before my day, I don't know.
I mean old houses that my parents have
Oh,
owned.
yeah, oh, yeah, I mean, I see, I have people come into my office and I look at the papers and go, holy Christ, it's Matthew Trella. That's my father. He represented you in 1942 buying your house, and you got a survey, and the survey's blue.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Blueprint.
blue with white,
Sure.
scratch outs.
Cool.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's all,
That's-
and in those days, there were no title companies. Nobody had title insurance.
But surveys now, how is the survey, how do you get a survey now? You gotta call a survey company, right?
You can, when we do the title, we ask you, you can request a survey with a title, and that's about $850 a survey. And, it will let you know, like, the borders and the boundaries of the
What is
property.
the survey company actually doing? Because I've seen survey guys come and, or come and almost do nothing to survey, because the properties are clearly outlined here in Clifton. Clifton specifically, because I'm in Clifton a lot, I'm very familiar with Clifton.
The biggest thing a survey company does is tell you whether there's an encroachment. Somebody put a shed up in their backyard and it's over your line. Now you have an issue. Is the title company gonna insure over that encroachment? Or you tell your neighbor and you start a neighborhood war? Like, move your shed, Buster.
Or your fence is over by
The
a
fence is over. Fences aren't a big deal because, you know, a fence is a fence. But you have a garage, especially in the older parts of town.
A fixed building.
Yeah, in the older parts of town, they weren't as careful then. Oh, because a lot of the descriptions, when you look at old deeds, not so much in Clifton, but if you go up county,
High shape.
from the big rock, you know, 42.8 feet to the big tree, you know, that's where you take the risk and you give it to her. You give it to the title company. But, yeah, it's gonna show an encroachment, and you wanna get rid of the encroachment. It's gonna show, like we were talking about joint driveways. There's gotta be a driveway agreement too. You must, if you have a common, what they call a common driveway with the person next door, you've gotta have an agreement that's registered in the county seat, so that everybody has use, who has to take care of it, and you make sure that your liability policy covers you.
And most of the time, they're not putting the total markers down anymore where they stake in stakes.
That costs extra.
Right.
You don't want to, normally people come into my office and they say, well, should I get those pins? If you're gonna put a pool in, you put the pins in. If you're not gonna do anything for about 6, 7, 8 years, no. Get the pins then, because the lawnmower's gonna knock out the pin. Your grandchildren are gonna come, hey, look what I found. You know, and all of a sudden they're gone and you don't know where the edge of the property is. But
It's just a rough guideline, within a few inches normally, especially in Clifton. They're
Yeah.
cut clear.
you just have to, yes, sir.
Hey, Matt, will that driveway agreement exist, be recorded somewhere?
You would hope it is. If not, and you're buying a house, you wanna make a driveway agreement with that neighbor. If you're buying it, I would, as your lawyer, you're buying the property, you want a driveway agreement, so that we know who's responsible for taking care of it. There's a recognition that you both own, the driveway's 20 feet wide, you own 10, I own 10. Be careful.
For
Yes.
real quick, like on Clifton Avenue, all the way down by the church, all the way down by Clifton Avenue, there's driveways that are separated into two houses that are common driveways.
Right.
They have agreements where they
They
have,
should.
who's gonna shovel it, who's gonna maintain it, you can't park in that driveway.
Right.
And once you get down, you go to the left or to the right.
Right.
Your-
Because the garages are in the backyard.
Yeah.
Yes,
I have
ma'am.
a question. Let's say you have property and it's adjacent to a public park, okay? Now, the way it looks is that there's a slight portion there that the way it's positioned, it looks like it belongs to you, okay? Even though with this, you know, your deed and so forth states that it isn't there. However, you decide to embellish it. In other words, you put a statue there, maybe a little park bench there or so. Now, my question
On
is.
your property or
No,
the
no,
park
no,
property?
on the park's property. Now, my question is, if you've decided to more or less put this there, it seems like you're using it, or it's your property or so. Now, is there squatters' rights with it, if it stays there, let's say it's positioned there for, let's say, 10 years, and the city doesn't do anything about it, so
There's a
then
thing
you
called-
own it?
There's a process called adverse possession. That's a legal doctrine called adverse possession, where I adversely use a piece of property that I don't own. But the guy that owns it, or the woman that owns it, they have to know about it. And they have to let you, and if they let you use that, technically you can make a claim under adverse possession that you now own that. But that's, in my 53 years, I've never seen anybody sue for adverse possession. It just doesn't happen anymore, especially when you get in a town like Clifton, I mean, where everybody's got their designated lot lines.
Yeah, but some
That doesn't
people,
happen.
I've seen, someone doing that, and somebody, according to the surveyor, said, actually, you were surveyed, and she has this on her property, and he says that actually, technically, the surveyor stated that she doesn't own it, but
It's
apparently.
next door. It's on the park property.
Yeah,
next-
yeah. So then it's there, and
It's
it's there.
just there.
Yeah, okay, okay.
It's
All right.
just,
I
you know,
just,
a lot of times, I mean, my neighbor's got some trees that, overlap onto my property. I don't care. I mean,
Well, I'm not saying, by nature, I'm talking about, man-made
Man-made
objects
bench.
as comparison, as comparison, I'm not talking about,
No,
nature things.
You wouldn't have to
Yeah,
worry about it,
yeah,
just
yeah.
no problem.
And there's also something a little less common called an easement by prescription. So what this is let's say you live by a park, or the park's right in your backyard, and the only way to get to this park is everybody is always going through your backyard, your property, to get to that. And you're gonna say, I don't want this anymore. So if they've been doing it, I think it's 30 years.
30 years.
If it's been happening for 30 years, and if it's a park, there's nothing you could do. It's called an easement by prescription. Goes with the land. That's the only access to the park. That's what people use. That's their pathway. There's nothing you could do about it. Can't put up a fence. Easement by prescription. Very hard to get rid of that.
Saddle River Park in Silverbrook has them.
Yes, where everybody has their own gate and
Yeah,
everything.
they have them, but there's also this one property that
Yep.
go right there. Say, I'm not doing that. Because when we go to see the fireworks, the community would go right through it, and I was like, come on, guys, use the front end.
That's an easement
They're
by
like,
prescription.
no,
Yeah.
let's go through here.
Well, that's what people do.
And they just said, no way, we're like, we own this, we're going through it. So that's what that is.
Any other questions?
I do have I don't know if you're gonna sum this up, but we're talking about fees. So you have a lawyer fee, you have,
You have a $1,500 lawyer fee.
right,
Let's say you have a $3,500 title company fee.
Right.
Depending on the price.
right.
Okay,
Let's say the house is 350,000, or 300, right?
so
15, where are my closing costs? What does that look like
Okay.
nowadays?
I tell everybody, when you buy a house, you gotta have about somewhere between $7,000 or $8,000
closing.
available for the closing. 1,500 to the lawyer,
Okay, that's doable.
3,000 to the title company, that's 4,500. 800 to the surveyor, that's 5,300. 300 in recording fees for your documents, that's 5,600. If you close in April, your first payment's not gonna be until June. So you gotta pay 3 months' taxes, because you gotta pay the May taxes, okay? So, I think you're at 5,300 or 55, whatever that number was, then you gotta add 3 months' taxes into that, okay? And then you have to prepay 1 year liability insurance. So, if that's $1,000, you have to prepay that, and then you have to put 2 months in towards next year, and you'll always pay the insurance premium through your mortgage payment in 99% of the banks. So, I mean, you're up there into the $9,000 range.
Right, so it would be safe to say, save at least 10,000 for your closing
Yeah.
fees.
Yeah,
You have
because
some
the
extra.
difference between what you need for the closing and that you're gonna spend at Home Depot.
Right.
You know, You're gonna find out all the things you don't have.
So basically what I'm hearing is like, say, $10,000 for closing fees and all this fancy stuff, and then you could put money down, or you could get a loan without money down, but you only basically need 3%, 3.5% to put down.
Under some of the mortgage
on
programs,
some
yeah.
of the mortgage programs.
With today's rate, what, 8, 7.5, 8,
Right,
you're
need
talking
more.
about a hefty mortgage payment.
right, so you need to put at least how much down?
Well, you wanna put 20% down if you can.
20%, okay,
20% gets you what they call a conventional mortgage.
okay.
And no mortgage insurance.
Yep.
And no, you know, what they
And-
call
and no
PM,
mortgage
they
insurance?
call PMI, private mortgage insurance.
Okay,
Okay, that insures the difference between the 20% and what you have. You know, you don't want PM. You
No.
don't want PM. I don't see too many PMI.
even if you're flipping the house, you still wanna put something down, no?
Well, if you're flipping the house,
Yeah, if you're.
yeah, with the
flipping
prices today, yeah. I mean, I did a lot of flips. I did
You still
about,
did 20% down?
well, we paid, no, well, we can't flip anymore because it's too expensive.
Too expensive.
The partner that I had, we would pay cash for the property,
Okay,
okay? You don't wanna get a mortgage if you can help it. So you pay cash for the property, you own the property, and then, you know, you
okay.
put whatever you put into it, and then you know, get an expert such as the gentleman to my left,
Mhm.
to sell the house, and, you go from there. But it's so expensive now, and it's not only the price of the house. I mean, what I used to, what I paid 300 for, it's now 5. And what I paid in goods, which was 250, is now 5. So now I got $1 million into this place.
Right.
You better be sure that you can sell. I mean, it's
That's not a good
it's
thing.
almost comical. On my street, I lived in Clifton over near Montclair. And when I see what a couple houses on my block sold for, it's astonishing. But you want a house, you want to live here, and in this neck of the woods, theoretically, you're making good money. Your salary is comparable to what it should be so that you can afford to live here. Or if you took that salary and you lived in Iowa, you could live like King Farouk. That's not gonna happen. You know.
Now, obviously, with the lawyer, the back and forth has happened, let's say. Attorney review, canceled the contract, we agreed on terms. Next thing that happens, which the lawyer and I are still heavily involved in. Remember, the lawyer's talking, him and I are on the phone all the time. If I'm not on the phone with him, whoever you're working with, if they're not on the phone with the lawyer almost every day, I know he loves that from me. They're really not doing the job properly.
It's him again.
And that's why I always get the cell phone number. I won't give it to the client, but I need it. So this is done. The next thing that happens, and in my contracts, I say 5 days. I want this next thing done within 5 days of attorney review, which is
The inspection?
the home inspection. Now I'm going to introduce Don Good from Home Inspections. Let us know exactly what you do. Come on up.
Okay. I gotta get some of your cards.
Make it some cups.
So I'm Don Good. I have 2 businesses actually, Good Home Inspection and Don Good Consulting. Good Home Inspection does the traditional home inspection. Don Good Consulting does a renovation inspection for the Fannie Mae home style 203K VA loan, any construction-like type loan. Just to go over the process, the home inspection and the renovation inspection is very similar. I'm looking for repairs that adversely affect the value of the home on a home inspection, okay? I'm also looking at the deferred maintenance also, like if there's the boiler needs servicing, or if the light fixture doesn't work, or a door doesn't close at a bedroom. But what I'm really looking for is repairs that adversely affect the value of the home. Can anyone name one repair that adversely affects the value of the home?
Flooding? If it's in
Flooding,
a flood zone.
that could vary greatly because I don't have a crystal ball. But it's a good point. I might see something at the property, like past
Roofing, windows.
roofing, windows, plumbing, electrical. But the numero uno one is actually the structure. Okay, that's the most expensive part of the house. When you're building a new house, that's the most expensive part of the house. When you're doing an addition, that's the most expensive part of the house. It's not It's not the carpet, it's not the tile, it's not the kitchen, it's the structure. You don't have a house without a structure, okay? So in a renovation consultant, I'm looking for those very same things, but I don't care if the kitchen's a little dated. I only care if you care. If you care, I care. If you don't care, I don't care, okay? On a home inspection, I may care because the upgrade kitchens and bathrooms could be very expensive. So I might have a comment, your kitchen and bathroom is dated. I suggest that you reach out to a qualified contractor and get an estimate of what it will cost to improve it. That said, on both types of inspections, I'm looking at the structure, the siding, the roof, the lot, the mechanicals, the plumbing, the heating, and electrical system. One of the big ones I'm looking for in an older home is knob and tube, okay? So if I find it in the basement, that's almost guarantees it's going up to the second floor. If I don't see it in the basement, I'll look up in the attic, see if I see it in the attic. If I see it in the attic, I know it's on the upper floors. So it's easier to replace the knob and tube on the first floor, but it gets tricky when you start going second and third floor.
What's knob?
Knob and tube is the first electrical wiring that was put in residential homes.
Okay.
Probably J.P. Morgan and Thomas Edison. That's their handiwork. And then you had Tesla in AC. Edison was DC.
I have found homes where I open up the ceilings
Mhm.
with gas lines used for lighting.
Right, that's a good point. I did a renovation inspection in Newark, and what was good about the house, the electric service was updated, the panels going to each apartment was updated, probably had 60 amps going to each panel. But I noticed that walking around the house, I saw one panel with one screw hanging in it. And then all the light fixtures were over the old gas lighting system. And they were all like disturbed. So, and then you see space heaters, then you see extension cords all over the place. So what we call that in the home inspection is a old modified system. So you have knob and tube, you have more modern wiring, BX, Romex. So what I had told the buyer, that I thought the house needed to be rewired. Your electric service is good, but you need to rewire the house. Problem with that is that most electricians don't want to rewire a house unless you gut it. There are electricians out there who will remove knob and tube surgically, so it doesn't have to be rewired. You just got to find the right guy.
Do you know anybody that does that?
I can look at my. No, no, I just try to. I'll just try to remember the project. Look at Google Calendar, find the address, and then look at my files, and I can figure out who that electrician was. Yeah. So yeah, basically. But the thing is, between the two inspections, there are two different types of reports. So a home inspection is a more detailed inspection, where I'm looking for repairs that adversely affect the value of the home. The renovation inspection is really a contractor's estimate. That's where I'm more like an estimator. It's in a format where the loan officer can read, you can read yourself, the underwriter can read it at the bank, okay? And the appraiser can read it. So your underwriter is the person that you never met, you never meet, you never talk to. You never talk to them for your life insurance, your health insurance, your stocks. Basically, they look at at the appraisal, look at my repair estimate, and look at the contractor's bid, and make sure all risks and concerns have been answered. Once that's been answered, then the loan moves to the underwriting process. You purchase the home, and the repair budget's deposited in escrow account. Once you take ownership of the home, if you need permits, then I come back out and I do what they call progress inspections. So I come out the demo phase, rough framing, mechanicals, electrical and plumbing. And then when I come to the last inspection, I expect the house is livable, all the permits are closed. If you got the certificate of occupancy, great. Okay. Home inspection, much shorter. I'm part of your life for a much shorter period of time. I'm just coming out there to do the initial inspection and doing that report, looking for repairs adversely affected value of the home. We also do radon and the wood destroying insect. Sewer scoping and other specialty inspections, I actually sub those out. 90% of my business is really centered around the renovation construction, working with investors, working for people who want to live with the home. And when I try to guide my clients, ask them questions, where you're going to live, when this work is going to be done. If I get a sense that you're from Europe or the Caribbean, I'm going to ask where you're going to live. Are you going to rent? Because typically these projects take about 6 months, but many times they go beyond that for reasons out of your control. Anybody have any questions?
You mentioned structural is the biggest. What are like the worst kind of structural things you've come across?
Foundation and rock.
The worst?
Or the 5 worst?
Well, the 5 worst, one, the house had to be torn down.
So what caused you to
that was termite damage. And it was visibly, it was known. When I went into the basement and I saw termite tubes all around the basement, the main girder was crushed. It was an old farmhouse, and basically the homeowner proceeded with the transaction anyway, because I explained to them certain defects you're not going to be able to find unless you do exploratory demo. I can't see behind walls. If I could see behind the walls, I wouldn't be standing here. But many times there's hints in the basement that give you an idea of what's going on. So that will be the worst one.
So what are some other things that cause the foundation or the structure to be in danger?
People modifying if they have a crawl space and they decide they're going to do a full basement, not having a structural engineer involved as far as the underpinning.
So they dig it out themselves?
They dug it out themselves without the guidance of a structural engineer, and they compromised the basement. Yeah, we see that from time to time. Actually, what we're seeing now is really investors whose projects have failed. And actually, I have one on my desk right now where the investor started digging out the basement, and he started underpinning it, and I think the contractor went bankrupt. They gave the contractor $150,000, went bankrupt. House is gutted, rewired, replumbed, but he left it in the middle of the underpinning process. Now, we recently had all this rain.
Yeah, it's been raining every day.
Then we had an earthquake.
Yeah, a little mini one, yeah.
So the structure seems is still sound, but somebody has to get in there immediately and underpin it. So the moral of the story is, because the HUD consultant, the renovation consultant, or the home inspector, depending on their background, when I look at a contractor, there's esoteric things I look for in a contractor. One is how he manages his change management. Because I always tell my clients, expect the unexpected. Okay. What's the unexpected? Financial crisis, COVID, earthquake, eclipse. Once you start a project, you got to finish it. The longer it goes on and on, that's where you start running into problems, especially after COVID. People who closed in 2020 got hit with inflation. Now, this was COVID was almost like a replay of maybe Gulf War II. Gulf War II, you had a spike in lumber too. So once I got a whiff of this problem, what was going on, because we got to a lot of disputes and people doing big projects, the lumber costs had shot up. What you do is you look at the lumber futures and you see what the material costs, and you can see when COVID hit, it just spiked. Did the same thing, I think, around 05 or 06 too. I'm sure that answers your questions. I got lots of stories.
No, it's very good.
Go ahead.
Next to me, next door, they sold a house,
Mhm.
and apparently the home inspector was there about, I'd say, two and a half hours or so.
Uh-huh.
When they moved in their master bath, they had a jacuzzi, and within about, they stayed, well, they entered the house, and about 2 weeks later, I see they have a truck there, and it says a plumbing, you know, and so forth. And apparently, then I spoke to them, I said, what's the problem? They say, oh, they found that there's a leak in the jacuzzi.
Mhm.
So, as you had mentioned before, the structural is the most important.
Mhm.
Now, my question is, there are times when you buy a house too, but I'm fortunate that when I purchased my house, I wanted the blueprints of the house. Now, my question is, if you do have and you purchase a house, is that common for people to have blueprints of the house, or basically that's obsolete, or is it to your advantage? Let me ask you that, to have the blueprints to the house.
I mean, it's always an advantage to have blueprints to the house, and if the homeowner was savvy enough to have taken pictures during the construction process, that would, you know,
Be also too, but,
yeah.
but the question is now, if, like you had said too, you really don't know, and I was talking to some builders and they said, you know, it's like going into surgery too, you're assuming this, but as soon as you get inside the body, there's a little different story.
That's a good question.
So my question is too, and sometimes they said with the house too, basically, and I've seen sometimes on these TV where they have all these renovations, and this one woman, she bought the house mainly for location. However, when she found out, and she was an astute investor, I mean, this isn't just somebody off the street, and luckily she knows a lot of contractors. Well, she wanted to do this and I can change this, but apparently she didn't have the blueprints or anything. They took down the wall, and all of a sudden, hey, wait a minute, we can't do this. She had to revamp the whole thing. She did a gorgeous job. Again, she had the financial backing of herself to do it. But you know what I'm trying to say? And this is my question then too, would be, does this happen, or did he do his job? But I don't know.
Well, the home inspection is a performance-based inspection. He can't see behind the walls.
Well, exactly, that's
So
what I'm trying to say, like you had mentioned.
So he should have tested the jacuzzi, filled it up with water, and see if it operated. But keep in mind that he didn't get in the jacuzzi and take a bath.
Right, exactly, or the amount of water, but that's my question.
You know,
So
once somebody physically sat in that jacuzzi, was there when it was installed, was the structure modified for the jacuzzi? Because remember, you got to support the weight of the jacuzzi itself, the water, and depending how big it is, one or two people sitting in the jacuzzi.
Or the age of it too, as well.
And the age of it too.
Or the amount of time that's used as well.
Yeah, so, you know, you could take a high power flashlight and look and see if there's cracks in the jacuzzi, but not really knowing more about that particular situation, what the root causes of the problem was. It's hard to tell.
So in other words, let's say if I want to sell a house and I have my blueprints there, I'm the original owner, I have the blueprints. Would it be advantageous of me then through my realtor, or do they get me like your expertise to say, hey, wait a minute, I have these, let me give them to the inspector? Would it be?
To give it to the inspector, you wouldn't have time for that, the inspector. For a home inspection?
Yeah.
To look at the blueprints?
Yeah, to see where the electrical is and so forth, and to see when it was installed, how it was installed. Because you're saying the structure is so highly important.
Right.
So that's why I'm assuming that it would save a lot of time.
But then now, you would have to do an invasive inspection of the structure, because I can't see behind the walls. So I don't know if the blueprints is that advantageous.
Yeah, but wouldn't describe, if you have poured concrete, the PSI, and wouldn't you have all these stipulations of what it was in the blueprints, like so many studs in a certain area or so, or the quality of the wood, or I don't understand. In other words, some of this is designated on the blueprint.
Yeah, that's a good question. I never had anybody ask me about blueprints on a home inspection.
Well, like I said, you
On a
know.
renovation inspection is
Yeah,
different.
no, I'm just questioning this,
Yeah.
because I don't know. Like I said, one of my friends is a civil engineer,
Uh-huh.
and he specified it, and like I said, I don't know if you ever heard of Rensselaer, but he's a graduate of Rensselaer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my wife went there.
Yeah, yeah. And, like I said, he says it's rather
But I met her
important.
in JT though.
Oh, that's great though, but I'm
I
just
didn't know she's gonna be
questioning
my
because
wife,
I don't know, you know.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, because it's writing a home inspection report is very challenging, and let alone introducing, looking at blueprints also.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I thought this would be
Looking at
an
blueprints
entry
as
to
far
it,
as
that
doing
you
a
would,
construction estimate is
Yeah,
in a challenge in itself by, depending
it
on the
makes it
scope
more
of it.
complicated, in other words? is
Yeah,
that
it
it?
would make it more complicated.
Okay, all right, I just
And-
wanted to know,
And be,
you know.
with this, you know, with the attorney review and all the moving parts of selling a house, that would,
Make it more complicated.
make it more complicated.
Okay, I just wanted to know, okay, thank you.
So I have a question around the foundation, like when you go into a basement, you know, my house is from 1950.
Okay.
Family. I'm down in, I don't know if you're familiar with this area, but I'm down near the Lakeview section, so those houses are
In
two
Clifton?
family, yeah,
Okay,
and they're old.
okay.
So the foundation in the basement, you could see it's crumbling, like there's some cracking and
Mm-hmm.
no water's coming in, but you
Mhm.
can, it's, you know, it's beginning to crumble.
Is it concrete?
Earth.
It must be concrete.
It's concrete,
1950.
and
Yeah.
then the bottom of the floor is starting to like crack, the
Okay.
basement floor itself.
It's normal to see cracks in the basement floor. The cracks that you're looking for in the basement, you're looking for a horizontal crack.
That way.
Yeah, that's the one that you're looking for. That's suggesting that there's hydrostatic pressure pushing on the basement wall. If left unchecked, the house, the foundation could collapse long term.
So it has to go like this way?
This way. Going this way is it's still a concern, but it's a differential settlement crack. That just suggests that the foundation is settled. It's settled over time.
Right.
How you protect your foundation is really diverting water 6 feet away from the house, keeping your gutters clean. If you have a sump pump, listen to your sump pump, how often it kicks on and off. If it's kicking off once every 5 minutes, then you need to look at regrading your lot, or extending your gutters. Or it may also suggest that you have a very wet lot or high water table.
I'm sorry. Can you like put that dry lock around your foundation? Does that help at all? Like
That
if you don't really
helps.
get
That helps,
water,
but the water's already penetrated from the outside to the
Right, 'cause
inside.
if you're having, right,
So if you're really having a problem, that's only just temporary.
if you're having crumbling of your, block,
Cement, yeah.
that's something that's been going on for some time, because the water has already gotten into it.
Mhm.
It's caused it, over years, drying, cooling, hot and cold,
Summer,
cause
winter,
it
fall.
become brittle, and they just break down.
could you get
over time.
mold in that?
You
Or because
could,
it's concrete?
if the humidity levels are high.
Yeah, the
But
basement's usually.
if it's a problem, if only a problem if there's severe material loss. Okay, if it's just like surface level masonry crumbling on the foundation, yes, that's a concern, but that's not a substantial material loss.
Sometimes you get white, like a white shear, and that's from the,
Efflorescence.
like a freeze line, you'll see that shear. That just comes as a.
I noticed that ants are
Clifton's always
serious,
been
cement ants.
Cement ants?
Yeah, I think that's what we had in exterminator, they said there were cement ants in the back stairs.
What if you have like an earth cellar? Like it's got that beveled wall? I don't know how to explain it.
Earth cellar?
It's my house was old,
What year was it?
probably in 1896.
Oh, okay.
So when I say earth cellar,
Mhm. You have a dirt floor?
no, I have a normal floor,
Mm-hmm.
cement floor.
Right.
But the walls are like, they look like,
They're what do you mean? They're
wavy and like
stone rubble foundation?
something like that.
It all during the 1800s. You know, basically when houses were built, there was no Home Depot. Or channel lumber.
Like you could peel, peel some of the stuff off, like,
Flagstone.
Yeah, your homes are built with the material that was available to them.
so I just dry lock that.
I mean, you can, but it's a dry lock just maybe temporary.
It's just sort of cosmetic.
It's just regular
Well, I
maintenance.
I don't know
You know, the recommendation is really not to dry lock, is just to let the masonry breathe naturally.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people paint, but especially in the exterior, but you should really, because what happens once you paint it, it traps moisture.
So now, speaking of dry lock, because I want to mention this, because I think this is something you look for. If you go into a basement that has a concrete basement and it's freshly painted, I think the first thing you're going to think is they're trying to hide some kind of moisture.
Well, that is true, and I do have in my templates that, with my home inspection software, that newly painted surfaces, and it doesn't have to be just in the basement, it could be in the first, second, and third floor, or in the attic, hides flaws. So, I can't see.
It's a ball.
If I had one, if I could, I wouldn't be standing here.
Absolutely.
I'll be short in Amazon. I'm Tesla. But yeah, definitely. That's usually a big sign, and especially if a house is being flipped. Also, that kind of limits my inspections too. Because on an older home, like built in 1890s, you know, all homes settle over time. But if the house is never, sometimes, you know, buying a house that's never been gutted is a good deal because you get a good idea of the condition of the structure. Like when you look at this window frame here, each side is 90 degrees, okay? Mm-hmm. So what happens when a house ages, you get racking, and you can look at the door frames, okay? So if I got a house built 1890 and it's got the original, what appears to be the original molding on it, and I see very little racking in the house, that kind of tells me that that's like a hint that, you know, the structure is pretty sound. There could be many reasons for that. Most of them is soil conditions. Like, you know, they hear talk about Montclair a lot. Does anybody know what Montclair stands for? Clear Mountain. I used to like Realtor. That said, the soil conditions in Montclair is pretty rocky. So when I sold my parents' house, we had to remove the oil tank. And I was told the tank didn't leak. But when you pulled the tank, they found a pinhole.
Yep.
So I was executor of my parents' estate, and basically it cost me 12 grand.
A big number.
But I was happy because you don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the tank was probably about 40 years old, but it was more than 40 years ago, but it's decommissioned like 40 years ago. But my point was the soil conditions in Montclair was rocky, so that gave me a favorable, and I'm not going to say this happens, don't take that as gospel, but because the soil condition was rocky, I had a not as bad outcome on the oil tank. Now back to the renovation loans and oil tanks, that was a big discussion. Believe it or not, on HUD, and Fannie Mae also, it's not mandatory to remove the oil tank, but it's highly recommended because it adversely affects the value of the home. Okay, so, any other questions?
So because the soil was rocky, that meant that the opportunity for the oil to seep was lessened because it was less pervious? Why?
Because the soil was rocky, I guess.
Didn't absorb.
No, it's probably the metal in the tank. Far as the metal in the tank, far as I can't think of the right word right now. Far as any corrosive, any corrosion, anything that was in the soil that could increase the corrosion of the tank was favorable because of the rocky conditions.
Okay.
Basic home inspection.
Basic home inspection. Now another, depending on what you're doing, are we mostly investors here or?
I think you're all over the place here.
I'm only here.
It's all over the place here. So a lot of times I see what happened, I go, maybe on the renovation loan, or if you're buying a house that you're gutting, okay? If you're buying a house and you know you're gonna gut it, you don't need a home inspection. Okay, so what?
Oh, okay.
Okay, or you don't need a full home
Right,
inspection.
environmental.
Just
Foundation.
environmental, and I'm looking at the foundation,
Yep.
okay? Many times I've been handed a home inspection report that you completely gut in the house. And I'm always curious, why did you get a home inspection? Because the siding, why am I looking at it? You're tearing it off. The windows, why am I looking at it?
Yep.
You install new windows, the kitchens and bathrooms, why am I looking at it? I'm gutting them. The wiring, the plumbing, why am I looking at it? In that case, you don't need a home inspection, but you could do the more environmental inspection. We could just look at just the foundation, but then we just get the concerns of sewer line, okay, because that adversely affects the value of the home. The water line, we're always looking for, even on a renovation loan, we're looking for lead lines. Some of the cities, we could take a step back, like in Newark, because they're installing them for free, and in Trenton also. But that program doesn't exist for every city. So we definitely got to list that as a material defect that adversely affects the value of the home of a water line.
Clifton did it. They did the water,
They have a
the
program?
lead, yeah, Passaic Valley Water.
Oh,
Because he
okay.
did it to my house.
Oh,
Oh, they're replacing
They
the
put
lead
bullet
lines.
through,
Yeah.
took the lead out, put that.
Yeah.
They have to come back now, put the sod and all that
Mhm.
good stuff.
Yeah, they've been working on that for a while.
Yeah.
My parents' house
Passaic
had a
Valley
lead
Road.
line.
I have a question, and if you're, so let's just say you're gonna buy a two-family house.
Uh-huh.
You're gonna live on one floor, renovate the other floor.
Mhm.
You still wanna do a home inspection.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It
right?
depends on
You're
how
still
much
gonna
you.
gut one apartment at a time, but
I get.
you're still gonna live there.
I get that question all the time on the renovation loan. Should I still do a home inspection? If you're only updating the kitchens or maybe or just putting a roof on the house, I would say yes, because you're keeping the majority of the home. Okay, just on an extreme case. If you're gutting the house, then that's when we take a step back and say, no, you don't really need it, a home inspection, but you really just want someone to take a look at the foundation. I actually had one recently in Roseland, and before he had the home inspection, he reached out to me because he was gutting the house, and what he did, he went back to the home inspector, just scaled back on the home inspection. Any other questions?
The average cost, did we say that?
Average cost of home inspection.
It really depends on the size of the home.
All depends on
and,
the size of the home, the age of the home.
what
but
you're
usually-
doing. Yeah.
Is there like a chart that you just
Yes.
eyeball it?
Just-
Yeah.
You have to
Crystal
Figure out how many
ball.
houses can you-
Well, single family house up to 2,500 square feet is $550.
Okay.
You know, most home inspectors in the area is somewhere between $550 and $750. I think it is.
Yeah, I've
now.
seen it as high as $1,000 depending on the size of the
So it
house
doesn't
and what
go
they have to
1,000.
do. Yeah.
Depending on the size of the house, the amount of the purchase, because there is a bigger risk when you're doing a home inspection on a $1 million+
Right.
house.
Right.
But things are so distorted now, even that's kind of hard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just did a home inspection in Short Hills, and I think they're paying $1.7 million for the house. And you wouldn't believe it still had Federal Pacific panels in the house.
Which is funny.
Yeah, which is funny. But, you know, they were buying it for the location.
Yeah, that's
You know, location. This is one extreme cases.
I don't know if you guys know, the Federal Pacific panel was a panel they used to use in houses. It was deemed very dangerous. A lot of houses still have it, but if it's shown in the home inspection, you're gonna get a credit because most people will not replace selling it, but they're gonna give you a credit for them.
It's the Federal Pacific and the Pushmatic. That's another one too. But on a renovation loan, I can't make you replace the Pushmatic, but it's highly recommended because you have the same issues, tripping breaker issues, which could lead to increased fire risk. Radon testing, 175. Wood destroying insect is 100. Anything outside of that, you have to talk to me about that. As far as, huh? Lead testing. That I don't do, as far as lead testing.
A lot of them don't. Yeah, a lot of people just waive the lead paint.
Actually, there's some
Now in
realtors
Clifton,
now
you
who are
can't.
actually getting into,
Yeah,
lead-based
because now it's
Before
mandatory.
1978.
Right, so now in Clifton, you can't sell a house without it being,
Yeah, Clifton's
lead
testing it every 2 years.
Right.
Now it's mandatory, and somebody comes
Mhm.
in, the town's
be
gonna
a
be more
part.
expensive than doing it on your own, which is why a lot of realtors, me being one of them, are getting our lead certification.
And
So it'll be a courtesy to my clients, I'll just do it.
Oh, you're gonna do it in-house?
Yeah, I'm
it's
just
like
gonna do it on us.
$300, I think it's $300.
I'm seeing a lot of that now,
Yeah, it's
realtors
about
are
three.
doing, lead testing.
Because we do work with a lot of landlords.
And then environmental testing, which you do great on. And actually, it's kind of convenient, to have I actually use a couple of realtors to do my radon testing, at least get them involved. Because they're licensed realtors, and they got better access to the house.
Of course,
after
yeah.
the home inspection. Or if I drop a canister, maybe I'll engage one of them to pick up a
Yep.
canister. It actually works out a win-win for both of us, where I don't have to travel back to the
And the
property.
Pico, whatever, is it like 4.1, it has to be under?
4.0 or
4.0
below.
or below, right?
But there's no safe level for radon.
So then, if there's no, what do you mean there's no safety?
Zero.
Right, so then that means you have radon in your house.
Yes, but after a certain number, that's when you have to vent it out. Right? That's
Yeah,
when you see
as
it.
the 4
Yeah,
point,
that's when you
okay.
see the pipe coming out from the ground all the way up.
Oh,
I see some houses like that.
It's rare in Clifton, but it happens. It's very common in Wayne.
They say east of of Route 1 is less common. West of Route 1 is more common.
And that's just a natural thing that happens. There's nothing we could do.
Nothing
That's
you
just
can do.
natural.
Very high in Sussex County.
Actually, I read somewhere where that is a precursor of predicted earthquakes.
Oh, wow.
Is radon levels.
Wow.
They can see that if radon levels have belched or have a spike,
No kidding.
that's a potential. I
Because
was
of
surprised.
because of the ground,
Right.
because of the ground shifting and fracking,
But then
naturally.
And then we got the crystal
Got the
ball.
crystal ball.
No, that crystal ball didn't tell me we were gonna have an earthquake last week, but hey, we all shook
Yeah.
and all texted each other. Did you just feel that?
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
I just need a miniature one I can wear as a chain.
That's it. So they make them. Trust me, they make them.
That'll look cool.
Wait, let me check my crystal ball.
I say that all the time. I say, I'm sorry, my crystal ball's broken today.
That's it.
Any other questions? I have some books for you.
Yes.
Now that you had a home inspection, home maintenance manual, I got more in my truck, but you're welcome to each have a copy.
Thank you.
That's your homework.
So the fun part is, the home inspection's done. And now, Don just sent me a report that I don't wanna read, because it's this thick. It's a very big report, and now it's up to me and the attorney to go over everything and see what's deemed
I got more.
able to be asked for. So if you're waiving certain things in the home inspection, there's certain things we can't ask for. There's also something called the seller's disclosure. The seller's disclosure says, hey, I know this is happening, and you signed off on it, so you can't ask me for it. The lawyer might still try, but if you sign that seller's disclosure where they disclose this problem, you're not gonna get anything out of it if it's a good lawyer. So the lawyer and I read this entire thing, figuring out, once again, my background in home improvement project management. I might be one of the only realtors that reads that home inspection, because there's a lot of stuff, a lot of realtors aren't gonna know what's going on in there. I'm gonna talk to the lawyer. I'm gonna say, what are we asking for, if anything? We're gonna come up with a list. We're gonna go to the other attorney, and then the negotiation starts. I've seen as much as $20,000 asked for, settled at $2,000. So it's really a back and forth. It's how bad people want the house. It's how bad the damage is. Oil tanks, once again, I pulled my oil tank. There was very little leakage. It's not just a pinhole either. It's the tank's negligence of overfilling the tank. You don't know the tank was overfilled, it's underground. And now you're seeing, I have a few listings coming up that still have working oil tanks. So I said, listen, they're still working oil tanks, at least they're above the ground.
Right.
In-ground is hard. People are very weary about that, because you don't know what's going on in there, but you still do the inspection, but it's a working oil tank. So my recommendation is convert it if you have the money. So home inspection's done, we negotiated back and forth. We signed off on everything, so now we know what the actual sale price is gonna be. A lot of the times, if you ask for $5,000 off, they're gonna give it to you as a seller's concession. They're just gonna say, this goes towards your closing costs. We're not actually reducing the price by $5,000. We're just paying $5,000 of your closing costs, your fees and such. That's the most common thing we're seeing right now. Home inspection's done. We're basically almost at the end of this entire process, but now we have Trina, who is actually one of our agents here at JK Realty, but has really steered into appraisals, which she does full time. Trina.
Hello. Seems like we're having fun over here today.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna start off with a pop quiz. What are the 3 most important things in real estate? Very
That's right.
Location, location, location. As Joe said, my name's Trina Braun. I'm a certified residential appraiser. I've been performing appraisals since 2004, and I got my real estate license in 1991. I actually started here at JK Realty as a secretary in 1990. Okay. Yeah, I'm a little old. Anyway, so to begin with, I want to clear up a common misconception, and that is that appraisers determine market value. Appraisers and realtors do not determine market value. Market value is determined by market factors. What an appraiser does is they analyze the market data that determines the market value, okay? We develop an opinion that is based in fact. So, how do we do that? Basically, we look at a whole bunch of components. We look at number of bedrooms, we look at number of bathrooms, we look at overall condition, improvements, we look at the square footage of a home. Gross living area is what we call it, and that's a big one, because you're not going to compare a 1,200 square foot home to what somebody's paying for a 2,700 square foot home. There are just certain things that are not quantifiable, and when you put it on the grid in the appraisal, you just can't make an adjustment that reflects market. It just doesn't work, okay? So we have condition, we have amenities, fireplace, central air conditioning. Does it have a garage? Does it have a basement? Is the basement finished? What kind of finish does the basement have? Is it retro 1960s, or was it just done maybe 10, 15 years ago? Okay. And obviously location. Now, what does location have that those other factors do not have? What separates it or differentiates it?
You can't move the structure of the home.
Exactly. You can, but your typical home buyer is not going to do that, right? You can change the number of bedrooms. You can change the number of bathrooms, conceivably, okay? You can change the condition. You can make improvements to the home. But you cannot change the location of that home, okay? And basically what happens is the external factors are what determine whether or not that location is going to have a positive or a negative effect on that property's value, okay? So let's say you're looking for a home, you commute into the city, and you find an ad and it says, excellent commuting location, perfect, nearby mass transit, et cetera, et cetera. You go take a look at the home, and let's say that there's a train running right in front of the property. Across the street, but right in front. Or maybe it runs right behind the property line, okay? That's gonna have a negative effect on value. You don't wanna be sitting on your deck, having a party, and hearing a train go by, okay? So basically it's called an external obsolescence. And that's a depreciation in value, okay, caused by an external factor.
How about gas stations?
Actually, I was gonna get into, right.
Okay.
There's commercial, there's floodplains, there's being within the, an airport flight path.
Yeah.
Okay, there's.
Graveyard?
Excuse me?
Graveyard?
Yeah.
It depends, yeah, it depends. Certain ones are they're kind of dubious, like I think Joe was mentioning before, as far as being by a park. Now, I grew up, my grandmother lived in a house that was on a cul-de-sac that dead-ended right into a park. One of her neighbors would always complain about all the people cutting through her property to go into the park. Okay, so you might look at it and say, hey, this is great, but then you might look at it and say, wait a second, all these people are trampling back and forth on my property to get to the park. Location to a school. Now, working here, I know that this is like an exercise in strategizing when you're coming and going from the office, because when school is coming out, it's crazy. It's just, you know, all this traffic and everything. So, is it a positive or a negative? Okay. the appraiser's job is to determine whether or not an external factor has a positive or a negative influence on that particular property, okay? And how do we do that? Well, basically what we do is we analyze the market data. The market reaction for that particular area, okay? The best example I can give is a floodplain, okay? Those of us who are familiar with Clifton know there are not a lot of floodplains in Clifton, okay? You go to Little Ferry, there's a lot of floodplains, okay? Now you're not going to compare a house in Clifton to a house in Little Ferry, okay? Very different. But you can look at the market reaction in those two different towns to see or to illustrate the difference the effect has on those particular properties. So for instance, buyers in Little Ferry are more tolerant to flood zones because they're used to it. It's more common over there. They know what they're getting into. People in Clifton, that's not what they're looking for, okay? And so basically, that's what it comes down to, location, location, location. There are many other factors that are involved. I went into a more comprehensive explanation in the appraisal process in the handout because it is very complicated and there are a lot of factors that go into it.
Basements, because I get a lot of, I hear under 203K or a HUD loan, you only get $5,000 uptick on renovating a basement.
It depends on the marketplace.
So if you put, so let's say your average cost of a basement project is 50 grand, you're only gonna get about $5,000 uptick on a basement.
Not necessarily. It depends on the area. There's a lot of things that depend on the market, the market reaction in that area. For instance, you take a 2-bedroom home. A 2-bedroom home up in Sussex County, let's say Vernon, okay, that's acceptable up there. That's not frowned upon. A lot of those homes are starter homes, 2 bedrooms are fine, okay? You put a 2-bedroom home in Montclair, it's not flying. You know, it's not going to be looked upon like your typical Montclair colonial 2,800 square foot home. So same thing with the basement finish. It depends. You can put $50,000 into a basement in a 1,200 square foot home in Vernon, and you're not going to see the same return as you would putting a $50,000 basement in, a 1,700 square foot colonial in Clifton. It all depends on the market reaction. Yeah, for that particular market area. Yeah, I know. A lot of times they say, oh, bathrooms are this much, kitchens are this much, but it depends on the particular marketplace.
I have a question here. Now, if you have a house, like you said, the location, and would this be favorable? I'm assuming it could be, I'm not sure though. Where you have a street that's busy or even semi-busy, not by a school, but just a regular so-called street, and a cul-de-sac. If you have a cul-de-sac, because it's in other words, it's not a through street.
Right.
Would that increase the value, or would it?
Some appraisers will give a property that's on a cul-de-sac more value. Okay, on the appraisal sheet, on the appraisal grid, there's only a certain amount of lines that you have to put factors on as far as what you're going to adjust for. So some will say residential and then they'll say cul-de-sac. And they will look at what the market reaction is in that particular town to determine whether or not being on a cul-de-sac matters to buyers in that area.
I see. So it could be, how can I say, favorable, and yet it could be acceptable?
Right, depending on that particular marketplace.
Okay. And also the town, does the town have an influence on that too, or?
In what way?
In other words, you have mentioned where the Sussex, the 2-bedroom, whereas Montclair, would it be more favorable in Montclair as compared to, say, Sussex? I don't know, I'm just saying. Location of the town.
Yeah, it would depend on that particular marketplace, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So for instance, another example would be if a buyer lives in Jersey City.
Right.
Okay, and over there, a lot of the homes are on, not traffic streets,
Right,
but they have a lot more traffic going back and forth, okay? When they come here to Clifton, and they look at a property that's maybe on the other end of Colfax, down towards the end, that's not gonna bother them.
Right.
Because they're used to that.
Right.
And that, to bring that full circle, with the pandemic, what we saw a lot of was people coming from either New York or from Eastern Bergen County, and they're comparing apples to oranges, where our job as an appraiser is to compare apples to apples. So it made it very challenging, because whereas a buyer from here might say, I don't want to live on a traffic street, I don't want to live next to a commercial property.
Right.
That's not what I want. But buyers coming, and so they would adjust their offer accordingly, but then buyers would come from maybe New York.
They're used to it.
They're used to it, and they'll say, well, based on what I'm getting here compared to what I'd be paying for that in New York, I'm just gonna drive up the price because it's worth it for me. So we're over here doing an interesting balancing act, because what's market value? Ready, willing, and able buyer and
And
seller.
obviously, it depends on the perception of the person,
Right.
basically, when it boils down to.
What they're
Right.
willing to pay for.
But we
Yeah,
have to
exactly,
keep it, we have to
exactly.
try to keep it in
Yeah,
line
exactly.
and analyze
But
that
still, some
market.
people may,
That's a
I mean, just to
challenge.
set an example
Yeah.
too, my neighbor sold a house a couple of years ago,
Mhm.
and apparently, what it was assessed for, they overpaid. And the reason they overpaid was, like you said, location.
Well,
So,
the-
and even though it was overappraised, they paid the extra amount.
And that's another challenge that we're coming up
But they were
against,
willing
too.
to pay the extra
Right.
amount because of the location.
Right, and that's a big thing in Montclair. Even before the pandemic, they would price the properties, and then people would come in 100 or 200,000 above list price, because that's how they did it. They just wanted to create that feeding frenzy. And
Well, I'm just saying, but
they
they
would- a lot came-
they really wanted the location.
Right, right. But the thing with the assessed value from the town is that they only do that every several years.
Right.
Whereas,
But no, this wasn't the assessment from the town.
Oh, I'm
This was-
sorry, I
This was from
misunderstood.
the real estate agent
Oh,
when
okay.
they listed the property.
Okay.
No, this is not, the
Okay.
town
Okay.
listed it much lower.
gotcha, okay,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And then there's the ratios as far as
Well,
what
I'm
the
just
tax.
saying that,
Right.
that's all the point.
Yeah,
But isn't the appraisal from the town lower than what the market
Not
value is?
necessarily.
every town is different, and they do it based on ratios. So like years and years ago, Newark, a $150,000 house was assessed at like 20-something thousand, but the tax rate was significantly higher to offset it. So
That's
some
the way they
towns
do
are
it.
over 100% assessed
Yeah,
value.
Yeah, but the rate is lower.
Yeah. So it just kind of
Yeah,
evens out, yeah. Any other questions?
Are there fees for the appraisals?
Yes. So it depends on basically the complexity of the appraisal. So they could be as low as like $350. They can go up to, for a residential appraisal, they can go up to like $650 for a jumbo loan. But it depends on the area too, because you can go to a house in Montclair, that's a tiny little house that's selling for $900,000. It's not as complex as a $900,000 house in, let's say, Clifton.
That's the other thing too now. Let's say you have a house and you said location is important, but now, this is my question too. Let's say you have a two-bedroom
Mm-hmm.
cottage, more or less,
Mhm.
but yet you have 10 acres of property. Now, that depends on the town that it is. Now, do you assess the land for more? Or, you know what I'm trying to say? In other words, basically, it's not in the house, it's in the land.
It's in the
Can they
land.
subdivide or whatever the case
Right,
may
you
be?
take into
So then, in
consideration.
other words, let's say the house is only worth, I'm just saying, 200 or something, but yet they have 10 acres in a residential area where there can't be subdivision and so forth. But then you go before the planning board, you gotta go all through.
It's
the
very
stuff.
complex, right?
But the thing of it is, therefore, you base most of your appraisal on the land.
Again, depends on the market. So if you're out in Sussex County somewhere and you have a smaller house on a couple acres,
Right,
10
right,
acres,
yeah,
whatever, then that's more typical to that area. Now, if you do something like that in Wayne, let's
Yeah,
say,
yeah, it
now
would
you
be.
have to try to find other sales that are similar.
Right.
Even if it's a bigger house, but on a similar piece of property, because the mortgage company wants to see everything bracketed. They wanna see the square footage of the home bracketed. They wanna see the lot size bracketed. If it has a special feature, like let's say it's got a view of a pond, you need another view amenity, a property with another view amenity, whether it's a mountain or whatever the case may be. So all of these things have to be bracketed. So going back to your example, we would have to look, even if we have to go back in time beyond what they like, which is 3 to 6 months, but that's kind of unrealistic because we don't live in a perfect world. Okay, you might have to go back a year. I just did a lakefront log cabin in Lake Mohawk. wasn't even 800 square feet,
Yeah.
but it was lakefront.
Yeah,
Okay.
on the location.
So now I had to find another log cabin. That one didn't have to be lakefront, but you tried to get it, because lakefront's unique, okay? So we had to try to find another log cabin just to satisfy the mortgage company, because otherwise they would come back to us and they would say, well, the subject's a log cabin, but you don't have any log cabins on here. So now we have to find a log cabin. So we had to go to Vernon. You wouldn't compare Highland Lakes to Lake Mohawk, but just to satisfy them and check off that, you
That's
know,
probably the only place
box.
you're gonna find is probably in Vernon.
Yeah, unless you get lucky and you find another one in Sparta. This actually was in the Byram section of Lake Mohawk, so that made it even more challenging, because there's only a certain amount of Byram that's located in Lake Mohawk. Yeah, and then you're looking at that small square
And then
footage,
it
800.
had the same square footage in the house, also the property was similar,
Yeah.
with the same
Yeah.
amount of acreage.
Yeah, so now we didn't really give that comp or that sale a lot of value, because it's not really comparable, it's just there to satisfy the mortgage company. Because they're looking at it saying, okay, you have a vinyl clad house here, you have this, you have that, but you don't have a log cabin. We wanna see market reaction to log cabins. We wanna know that the log cabin is marketable in case the buyer defaults on the loan.
Yeah, I hear that's a big issue with appraisals. I was talking to an appraiser on another movement mortgage seminar, and basically he had a house in Plainfield that was built out of the leftover blocks of the George Washington Bridge.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
the problem was, what does he compare it to? I mean, log cabin, you could find another log cabin.
Right,
maybe.
but that's,
So you're gonna find another house built out of
Yeah.
the stones of GW Bridge. So it's like a unique property.
right. But then the appraiser has to determine, does the market really care about that? You know, you might have one or two buyers that say, hey, this is great, this is an awesome thing, and other ones are like, who the heck cares? I don't care about that. You know, so it's very interesting. Even like when you do like the mill, if you're familiar with the mill in Little Falls, the converted carpet mill. Whenever I do an appraisal in there, not in the tower, but in the ones that were converted, I have to find another condominium development that was converted. So it's like, there's one in Glen Ridge, it was a telephone company, and then there's other ones all over the place. But I have to go there just to find, because it's unique, it's
Talking
not,
about the Bell Atlantic building?
yeah.
Oh, sorry. With Verizon.
So it's a complicated process. And, you know, I wanted to focus on location today because that's the most important factor in determining value. But for those of you who are gluttons, you know, gluttons on punishment or whatever, or just interested in learning, there's more in the handout that was given. It's a little bit more detailed. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trina.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned location, because I was watching the news or so, and there was the last fall, there was the one fellow that won the $1 billion. Well, obviously he didn't get the total amount, but, and he decided to invest in real estate. He was an astute investor. And apparently, some of the people had said he's investing in real estate, but he's got a lot to learn. And the thing of it is, they just had it on the news where he bought in a cliff area in along whatever of California, and apparently there was a mudslide with the rains and so forth. So apparently the house almost dissolved, or whatever you want to call, into the other property down below, and the $25 million that he invested is like
Hanging in the balance.
Literally.
But
Yeah, literally.
and they had, you know, they had like, he all of a sudden he got this money, and he's going to invest, because real estate's great, it's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
But they, astute investors who've been around the block said, wait a minute, you know, look at your P's and Q's here,
Well,
you
you have
know?
to think like an actuary.
You know, no, but I'm just saying, and they showed the picture, and it was, it was bad, it was bad. It was beautiful, you know, just like
Expect the unexpected.
unbelievable.
Yeah, you gotta be
25
careful.
million. Not to see that.
So now the nice thing is, did the home inspection, did the appraisal, there's only two real steps left. Number one, we're gonna do the final walkthrough. Final walkthrough is very important, okay? We're gonna go and make sure that if there were tenants there, or if the people wanted to be rude, there's no holes punched in the walls, there's no floorboards missing. The staircase is still there. You guys remember that movie where Richard Pryor, when he goes to buy the house, he's like, oh, I told you we were taking the stairs, the whole staircase is gone. Yeah? So you want to make sure of that, because what's going to happen is anything that happens at the final walkthrough, we're bringing to the closing table. We're taking pictures, and they're going to hold money in escrow for these problems. There could be money held in escrow for a number of reasons. If you're evicting a tenant, the people might say, listen, we gave them the 60 days, we're closing with them in, but we want $5,000 held in escrow for legal fees, if, in fact, we have to evict them.
I have one like that.
And I'm doing that literally right now as we speak. So that will happen, but if the money doesn't get used for legal fees, they get the money back. Closing table is pretty simple. It's a lot of paperwork you're gonna sign. A lot of people are doing it electronically now. I always attend the closing because I always go to the walkthrough. I wanna make sure that there's no, well, I saw this when that wasn't there. I wanna make sure I'm representing the client the whole way. When I'm a dual disclosed agent, which does happen, it's still an easy process because I'm the go-between between the two people. I don't have to worry about another realtor. It's me discussing between the buyer and the seller. Closings usually typically go very smooth. I just want to touch base on this. The NAR lawsuit. Everybody's heard about this, right? Everybody's heard about the new lawsuit going around that they think is going to change real estate forever. I don't think we're going to see this as a problem in New Jersey. This is my opinion. I've actually been interviewed a couple times about this. In New Jersey, on our paperwork, we have always said, this is our commission. We are paying this part of the commission to the buyer's agent. Now they're saying that you should have the option not to do that. Realistically, you've always had that option. If you don't put a percentage of it towards the buyer's agent, unfortunately, which is not their fiduciary obligation, that is to represent you. But if you don't pay them anything, you're going to have agents that won't be showing the house, they'll be steering, which is illegal, their client away from that house for some reason. They'll make something up. Well, you know, the property used to be a graveyard. I don't know if you want to live on a bunch of bodies. You saw the movie Poltergeist, so I want to go look at that property. Meanwhile, this property, I already talked to the agent, they're still paying out 2% or whatever it is. I don't think it's going to affect us very much because I don't see much changing in New Jersey. If you want to sell the house and you want the most for it, you got to pay the buyer's agent something. If you don't, like me and my company, I have buyer exclusive agreements. I'm just changing it to say if they're not offering a commission, if you spend under $500,000, this is what I'm going to charge you. Over 500, this is what I'm going to charge you. It's going to be a fair number, not based on a percentage, just based on my time. And I want to make sure that you sign off that I'm your agent. I can't work with you showing you houses every day, 3 times a week, if you're working with other agents. To me, now we get a lot of, knock on wood, we do work with a lot of sellers and landlords here, but I like buyers. I like working with buyers. I like looking at new homes, and the home improvement project management of my background helps tremendously when we're going to look at houses, especially investing, especially for landlords, but for first-time home buyers too. Okay. We, as JK Realty, we do all over New Jersey. Don't just think Clifton. I have an open house tomorrow in Manahawkin. We go everywhere because we're licensed in New Jersey. We're very community oriented, so much where we are constantly trying to give back. I'm actually one of the elected officials on the Board of Education in Clifton. So I am doing whatever I can for my community. The money that we get in this company, we put back into the community. We're actually working on our 35th year anniversary, which we're going to do here. Open it up to the community, make sure everybody knows this is what we're about here. Here, we don't interview real estate agents. We have real estate agents that are related or that we have known for 20 years, 30 years. We cannot just hire someone off the street with what we've built. We're friend and family oriented since 1989. That's what we're about. That's why we do work all over the state, because a lot of the people that we work with have moved. Anything you ever need from us, questions, concerns, hey, what's going on with the lawsuit? What's the property going for next door to me? Call me. This is what we do. I want to thank everybody for coming out here today. And then at the closing table, I put this in my pocket. This is what you get. You get the key to your house. Hopefully, it's not this big. Because if it is, I'll tell you not to buy that house. Because there's something wrong with that. Well, I appreciate you all coming out today on this day. And any other questions, please, we're here. And enjoy the refreshments before you go to, because we bought them. Enjoy them. Please.
You had said seller's concession. What is the difference between the seller's concession, like any closing cost credit, Because I've had deals where the mortgage company, wanted like just closing credit, whether it is a seller's concession or if they're paying for repairs, you know, $5,000, when you do the addendum,
Right.
right? I had put for repairs because I didn't know they said the mortgage company wanted the words closing cost credit.
Because even though it's being used for repairs, that's what we're using it for at that time. We're saving you that money that you're gonna pay whatever is due at the closing table, but you're gonna use that money that you're not paying there for repairs, or they're not gonna repair. A lot of
Right.
times you give the people the credit at the house, and they don't do it. They're getting too much of a credit, they're going with the highest estimate to get as much as they can. Once again, I know how much things cost, so I know immediately if they're trying to pad the bill.
And two, like if I'm a buyer and I'm gonna get you know, I need repairs done, sometimes the sellers are gonna do like the bare minimum.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I would prefer getting the credit
And then you do it the right way.
and doing it the right way, not
100%.
just having them just.
Sellers a lot of time are gonna fix up the house to the minimum that they can.
Yeah, right.
They're gonna put in the cheapest floor, the cheapest roof, they're gonna go over the existing roof, that's what they're gonna do patchwork, they're gonna put on dry lock, that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna hide the defects and the flaws, and then when you get in a year later, great, I thought this was fixed. It was, but it wasn't fixed the way you should fix, it was fixed based on cost.
Not all sellers.
Not all sellers,
Not all
correct.
sellers.
And as a dual agent, you're representing both the seller and the
Absolutely.
buyer.
Good.
But I'm not getting personal, but like who gets the not more attention? Because how could you say to a buyer when you know the seller, you know what I mean?
So a dual disclosed agent, which you know, you have to sign off on. You have to say, I'm going to allow you to represent me for both parties. I'm going to allow you to represent both parties in this transaction. If you're selling, or even if you're buying, and you're buying through my house, you have to sell that. You have to sign that paperwork. I don't disclose anything that should not be disclosed. If I know that there's something that they're trying to keep that's on the seller's disclosure and they don't want me to disclose it, they don't want me disclosing numbers, I can't do that. That's my obligation to them. But I have my buyers do their due diligence. Representing both parties is actually, to me, I have found it the easiest because I'm the communication between the buyer and the seller. If there's a problem with the two lawyers, I can call the buyer and the seller and figure this out and then let the lawyers know, I solved this problem, this is what we're going to do. Transactions go much smoother when, not all the time, but for me, I found they go much smoother when I'm able to represent both parties. It's obviously better for the company because the company makes more money out of it. But they close quicker and they're happy about everything. They know that I was in touch with the seller, I was in touch with the buyer, I was the go-between, so I'm not embellishing, I'm not adding anything. This is what was said, yes or no. And obviously, if there's a severe problem that comes up with the home inspection and I'm representing the buyer, I will tell the seller this is something you absolutely need to fix. Wiring, roofing, anything like that. This is just doing the right thing by the person buying the property. And if they don't, we offer the credit. Absolutely. Any other questions?
I just want to add, it was a fantastic experience, and
Thank
everyone
you.
who worked here did a tremendous
Yeah.
job.
Yes.
And I, before coming in, I had some knowledge, but when I'm leaving, I have a whole bunch of knowledge.
Thank you.
To the gentleman here,
Yeah, and I want to thank everybody that helped me out today. Peter's still here, Don, Trina, appreciate it. Matt and Sunflower left, they had, obligations they had to do.
Charles.
Oh yes, absolutely, we appreciate it. And if there's anything you guys need to know more about, tell me and I'll do a seminar on it. That's what we do here, we're all about bringing people in, that's what this room is for.
His father was a judge. And,
Good job.
Great job.
Thanks guys, and thank you all for taking your time to be here. That seminar went incredibly well. We had a good turnout and we had a great back and forth with people. There were a lot of questions. It seemed like a lot of people got a lot out of it, which was the whole purpose of this. The whole purpose is always keeping people informed as to what's going on with real estate and mortgages. I want to thank Peter Best, Matt Trella, Sunflower Duran, Don Good, Trina Braun. You guys all made this day amazing. We all did our presentations and everyone had questions about everything. It seemed like it was a really good event and I look forward to doing more of them. As always, if you're looking to sell or buy, Joe Siano is your guy.